Yo, Atlas speaking and welcome to part 10 of What If I Was Reborn in Naruto as the Akatsuki Mastermind controlling Shinobi history. Let the tale begin. Chapter 251, This is the Treasure We Need. Seeing this scene, both the remaining Ukigakure, Snow Ninja, Shinobi and Koyoki, Konan, and the others were deeply shocked, taking a long moment to process what had just happened. Dodo's strength was widely recognized by Ukigakure's ninja. They believed that while his power might not rival the 5 Kage of the 5 great shinobi villages, it was not far behind. Yet, before Byakuya, their leader Dodo couldn't resist at all. Koyoki and Sandeu were also stunned by Byakuya's strength. They had thought he was only boasting about his power. When Byakuya faced off with Dodo, they expected a prolonged battle. To their amazement, the fight ended in an instant, with the man they considered a lifelong enemy, Dodo, defeated effortlessly. Konan also looked on with mixed emotions. She was confident she could defeat Dodo, but not this quickly. After dealing with Dodo, Byakuya dragged him by the collar to Koyoki and Sandeu and sighed, "The mission to defeat Dodo is complete. Now, it's time to fulfill our agreement." Koyoki, still in a daze, looked at Dodo, then at Byakuya, before nodded, saying, "Lord Byakuya, Koyoki Kazahana will honor her agreement with the Akatsuki. Whatever you need, please tell me." At this point, Koyoki no longer brave enough to address Byakuya casually and used a more respectful title. Dodo, still conscious, glared at Byakuya and Koyoki. If his guess was correct, the jutsu Byakuya had used was would release, a technique of the first Hokage of Konohagakure. Once again, Konoha had interfered. Koyoki, this traitor, would rather make a deal with outsiders than give the treasure of Ukigakure to him. Fuming, Dodo shouted, "Koyoki! The treasure of the Land of Snow belongs to the Land of Snow. By trading it to foreigners, you betray our country." Hearing this, Koyoki's face darkened. "The real traitor is you. If not for you, my father would still be alive, and the people of Ukigakure wouldn't be suffering more and more." Dodo sneered, "Koyoki, I underestimated you. But now that I'm the loser, as a final request, you should at least show me your father's treasure. The ninja with you must be here for the Land of Snow's treasure, right?" Koyoki hesitated briefly before taking out a necklace. She looked at Byakuya and said, "My father once told me that the treasure of the Land of Snow is nearby. Let's go together and take a look. If it's of use to you, I'll give it to you. Then let's go have a look." With that, Byakuya cast a glance at Dodo before shaking his head. After a few dozen minutes, Byakuya's group reached a nearby glacier. A massive glacier towered over the tundra, sparkling like a giant jewel. Standing before a cliff, Koyoki's hand glowed blue, and, before their eyes, the glacier melted at a visible speed, revealing a wide passage through the ice. They followed it deeper into the glacier. Finally, they reached the heart of the glacier, where the long-sought treasure of the Land of Snow lay. Koyoki and Dodo both felt anxious, uncertain about what Sosetsu Kazahana had hidden here. Illuminated by distant wall lights, the treasure appeared. The Land of Snow's treasure wasn't a powerful weapon, nor an unimaginable hoard of gold or silver. It was simply a few giant heaters, melting the surrounding ice and snow at an impressive speed. In the center of these heaters lay a quiet journal with Sosetsu's name written on it. Koyoki picked up the journal, glanced at it, and, with tears in her eyes, threw it at Dodo's face. Dodo picked up the journal and read it, his expression darkening as he began to question everything. The journal was about Koyoki and also mentioned the giant heating devices in the glacier. It turned out that the treasure Kazahana Sosetsu had spent so much time and money to create was just these heating devices, which served no purpose other than melting the permafrost. He had killed his beloved brother for these worthless things. The betrayal felt unbearable. Emotionally shattered, Dodo laughed hysterically, "Ha! Sosetsu deceived me, deceived the entire Land of Snow. What good are these devices?" Koyoki's face remained cold. "This is why you were unfit to be a true daimyo. To my father, the treasure wasn't these heaters but the fertile land that would emerge once the ice was melted, and the hard-working people. With these devices, the land of snow can gain more arable land. On the other side, Byakuya and Konan stood with their arms crossed, observing the confrontation between uncle and niece. To Konan, both the true nature of the land of snow's treasure and the dispute between the two were intriguing. She especially appreciated Koyoki's final words, considering the people as the treasure of the land of snow. Looking at Byakuya, she sensed something and said with a hint of surprise, "Byakuya, did you already know the treasure of the land of snow was just a set of heaters? No wonder you chose Koyoki over Dodo. Koyoki cares for the people and, as daimyo, would be willing to share the chakra armor technology with us. Dodo, on the other hand, never would. As for the treasure, I did know what the land of snow's treasure was." Byakuya looked intently at the heaters. But, in truth, the real treasure of the land of snow is these heaters, not the chakra armor technology. Konan was momentarily taken aback, then smiled. "Byakuya, you're absolutely right. These heaters are indeed the true treasure. The chakra armor technology pales in comparison." Byakuya shook his head slightly, as Konan hadn't fully understood his thoughts. He genuinely believed these heaters were valuable. The heaters used chakra as their power source. A device capable of generating heat from chakra was indeed a treasure. If this technology could be harnessed, Amigakure would never need to worry about energy resources again. For this alone, the former daimyo of the land of snow truly had great foresight. Chapter 252, Divergence on Immortality. In Byakuya's memory, after the end of the Fourth Great Shinobi War in the original timeline, the shinobi world enjoyed more than a decade of peace. During this time, the nations of the shinobi world developed various chakra-based weapons that rivaled the power of tailed beasts. For example, Kumogakure developed the chakra cannon, while Kirigakure created an entire chakra-powered fleet, testaments to the vast potential of chakra technology. To advance further, the Akatsuki would not only need to enhance its members' abilities but also embrace technological power. Pulling his thoughts back to the present, Byakuya approached Koyoki and the defeated Dodo. Glancing at Dodo, whose face was drained of all hope, he turned to Koyoki and said, "We've taken care of the traitor who usurped power for you. Now, it's time to discuss the payment for this mission." Koyoki, a bit anxious, responded carefully, "Lord Byakuya, please tell me what you require. I'll do my best to meet your terms." Byakuya nodded, holding up two fingers. "I'll give you two choices. First, hand over the technical data on both the chakra armor and the chakra heaters, and Akatsuki's business with the land of snow will be considered complete. The second option is to bring the land of snow into the Akatsuki. The Akatsuki will then provide you with protection, ensuring that no one will trouble you again." Koyoki fell into deep thought, weighing the pros and cons of each option. The first option was the more balanced one. By providing copies of the chakra armor and heater schematics, the land of snow would settle its debt with the Akatsuki and be free to pursue its own path. The second option, however, meant that she would effectively become a vassal of the Akatsuki, surrendering the land of snow's independence to live under the shadow of the organization. After careful consideration, Koyoki looked at Byakuya and said, "Lord Byakuya, I choose the second option. I am willing to lead the land of snow into the Akatsuki." With this declaration, Koyoki felt an immense weight lift from her heart. In her years of exile, though protected by Sandayu, Koyoki had come to understand that the shinobi world was a dark and ruthless place. She desired independence for her country, but she knew that, given its limited power, the land of snow could never truly stand on its own. A powerful shinobi like Dodo could seize power in a small nation, yet his strength was negligible before Byakuya. To secure lasting peace for the land of snow, they needed the Akatsuki's protection. Without it, there was no telling when another powerful rogue ninja might emerge, plunging her country back into chaos. Seeing that Koyoki had accepted his terms, Byakuya nodded slightly, patiently waiting for the system's notification. Several minutes passed without any message, causing Byakuya to feel a bit puzzled. After a brief reflection, he guessed the reason. The system hadn't awarded a reward because Koyoki was not yet the official daimyo of the land of snow. The reward would likely come once she formally assumed the title. With Koyuki's agreement to join the Akatsuki, Byakuya and his team didn't linger on the frozen plains. After a short rest, they set off toward the capital of the Land of Snow. When the citizens of the Land of Snow saw Dodo locked in a prison cart, they were stunned. But upon recognizing Koyuki and Sandayu, their shock turned into cheers. They had suffered too long under Dodo's oppressive rule. Upon reaching the daimyo's palace, Koyuki and Sandayu busied themselves with the administrative tasks necessary for her succession. Establishing full control over the Land of Snow and securing Koyuki's new role as daimyo would take at least a few weeks. During this period, Byakuya and Konan remained in the Land of Snow, helping to stabilize the region while contacting Ehiko to send envoys to finalize the alliance agreement. When things settled down, Byakuya finally found some time to handle the Akatsuki's accumulating matters. As the leader, though he often took a hands-off approach, he alone, knowing the future storylines, could oversee the grander strategy. Meanwhile, in a small nation somewhere in the Shinobi world, standing on the edge of a cliff, Orochimaru looked down upon a distant village, a hint of mischief flickering in his eyes. After over a month of investigating the black market, Sasori of the Red Sand and Orochimaru finally tracked down remnants of the Sky Ninja in a remote mountain forest. This small village on a hillside appeared ordinary, but it concealed hidden depths. The ground beneath was not just solid earth, it was a vast fortress. Noticing Orochimaru's expression, Sasori narrowed his eyes and said, "Orochimaru, this is supposedly the Sky Ninja's hideout, but it doesn't look like it." Orochimaru smirked and replied, "I've dealt with Shinno a few times. I know exactly what kind of people work for him. Besides, what other village outside the hidden villages could gather this many shinobi? You know Shinno?" Sasori's face darkened as he questioned Orochimaru, "If you already knew the Sky Ninja's whereabouts, why waste my time?" Orochimaru shrugged, unbothered. "The location of the Sky Ninja village shifts constantly, so I didn't have a precise location. And it's not like this outing has been a waste, we've collaborated on a few targets, haven't we? Ma. It's a pity, though, that you're wasting time on puppetry. Puppet immortality is not true immortality. Those materials of yours are far from reaching their potential. And Sky Ninja Village is also called Soragakure, but it is a fan-made name and isn't very well known. Hence, I will be using the English name." Sasori's face grew cold. "Orochimaru, don't push me to turn you into a puppet. I don't want to break the rules Byakuya said." Though partners on this mission, Sasori and Orochimaru had a tense, complicated relationship. On one hand, they made an effective team against formidable enemies, often taking down rogue ninjas with bounties on the black market. But on the other, they held irreconcilable differences over the path to immortality. Sasori believed that flesh is weak and ephemeral. True immortality lies in sealing chakra and one's soul within a puppet. Orochimaru, however, is a proponent of soul transmigration, believing that the best vessel for the soul was always a living body. "Just a minor disagreement on the road to immortality, Sasori," Orochimaru said lightly. He wasn't fazed by Sasori's warning but preferred to avoid infighting before their encounter with Shinno. Shinno was not only the target of their mission, he also possessed a few secret techniques that Orochimaru wanted. If negotiations failed to secure Shinno's techniques, Orochimaru would need Sasori's strength to take them by force. Chapter 253, The Secret Technique of Flesh Activation. Leaping down from the cliff, Sasori and Orochimaru walked confidently toward the hidden Sky Ninja village. Before they reached the heart of the village, a group of Sky Ninja, wary and hostile, quickly surrounded them. These Sky Ninja were remnants of their once feared village, having survived in secrecy for years. Their ultimate goal was to see their floating fortress soar through the skies once more and take revenge on the Konoha, which had crushed the Sky Ninja in the past. To protect their secrecy, they couldn't let anyone leave alive who discovered their whereabouts. Just as the Sky Ninja were preparing to attack, a messenger leaned in to whisper something to their captain. After listening, the captain addressed Orochimaru and Sasori with newfound respect. "So it's Lord Orochimaru. Leader Shinno has been waiting for you in the guest hall." With a gesture, the captain led them forward. Soon, Sasori and Orochimaru were in the guest hall, facing Shinno, who looked more like an elderly farmer than the leader of a ninja faction. Once they were seated, Shinno, with a sour expression, asked, "What do you want, Orochimaru?" "I despise Konohagakure, even if you're only formerly of that village. If you're here to discuss plans against Konoha, I'll gladly host you. But if you've come for other reasons, you might as well leave now." "I have no immediate interest in Konoha," Orochimaru replied, pausing briefly before continuing. "But my companion here shares your hatred for Konoha. You might have more in common than you think. This is Sasori of the Red Sand. His parents were killed by Konoha ninja." Sasori shot a cold glare at Orochimaru, irked at his intrusion into a sensitive part of his past. Shinno observed Sasori for a moment, noticing immediately that his body wasn't entirely human. As an experienced medical ninja, Shinno could tell Sasori's body had been transformed into a puppet. Still skeptical of Orochimaru's intentions, Shinno cut him off. "Enough small talk. We aren't that close, so let's get to the point." Orochimaru's smile faded, and he got to the heart of the matter. "Shinno, I suspect you had a hand in the recent lockdown of Kumogakure. During their conflict with Konoha, you must have acquired quite a few valuable assets from them." He leaned in slightly. "I've heard that one of those assets is the body revival technique." Shinno's face darkened, clearly surprised at Orochimaru's intelligence network, but he nodded. "Yes, the body revival technique is in my possession. Are you after it as well?" "Of course," Orochimaru said openly. The body revival technique was a closely guarded secret of the Kumogakure, on par with the forbidden jutsu recorded in Konoha's Scroll of Seals. This technique allowed Kumogakure to produce powerful, resilient warriors. Orochimaru had no intention of becoming a muscle-bound brute, but he knew the technique would simplify many of his experiments, especially those related to his soul transfer jutsu. Shinno sneered, "The body revival technique took me considerable time to acquire. You'll need to exchange a technique of equal value." "What do you want in exchange?" Orochimaru asked. Shinno answered without hesitation, "The artificial tailed beast technique recorded in the Scroll of Seals from Konoha. Only if you offer me that technique will I give you the one you want." Orochimaru narrowed his eyes, glancing at the ground beneath them, considering Shinno's intentions. Was Shinno planning to create an artificial tailed beast to power the Sky Fortress again? Orochimaru recalled how much effort he and the third Hokage had spent to destroy that fortress years ago. Finally, Orochimaru produced a scroll from his robe and handed it to Shinno. In return, Shinno pulled out his own scroll, passing it to Orochimaru. After a quick exchange of glances, both parties realized they had fallen into each other's trap. At this moment, Sasori of the Red Sand spoke up. "I'm not here for the body revival technique. I'm here for the kunai gun and the method to manufacture chakra weaponry." He added ominously, "I suggest you hand over these techniques promptly, or my puppets won't be so kind." Hearing Sasori's demand for his chakra technology, Shinno's face darkened as he glared sharply at Orochimaru and Sasori. These two had come straight to him, demanding his secrets and threatening him with force. Did they really think he was just some pushover to be toyed with? With that thought, Shinno gestured toward the exit and said icily, "Since you two have shown no sincerity, I suggest you leave immediately. The Sky Ninja Village does not welcome you." Sasori and Orochimaru exchanged a look, then turned back to Shinno and launched a coordinated attack. Sasori summoned his puppets Black Crow and Grey Ant. These were masterworks by Sunigakure standards, but to Sasori, they were only basic puppets. Orochimaru used his hidden shadow snake hands, unleashing several venomous snakes from his sleeve that slithered toward Shinno, locking onto his position. And, the puppets have Japanese names but meh. Shinno, prepared for a fight, drew a scalpel from his waist. With swift precision, he sliced through the air, severing several of the attacking snakes and leaving them writhing on the ground. However, against Black Crow and Grey Ant, his scalpel didn't seem as effective. It barely left shallow scratches on their metal surfaces, failing to slice through them. Unfazed, Shinno clenched his fist and lunged at the puppets, shattering them into pieces with a single strike. Dodging the duo's attacks, Shinno moved several dozen meters away, keeping a close watch on Sasori and Orochimaru. From the moment he noticed these two, he had prepared for a fight, as Sasori and Orochimaru were rogue ninjas, and rogue ninjas couldn't be trusted. With such people, the only reliable means of negotiation was brute strength. Seeing his puppets smashed to bits, Sasori's expression shifted. Black Crow and Gray Ant were both crafted from metal. He could have accepted their destruction by ninjutsu, but for this seemingly unremarkable Shinno to smash them with his fists? Could Shinno possibly be a taijutsu master on par with the fourth Raikage? Unlike Sasori, Orochimaru had discerned Shinno's technique, and his expression turned more complex. Shinno's recent taijutsu moves were unmistakably the 8 gates technique from the hidden Konoha village, and he had opened 4 of the gates. Orochimaru was baffled by how Shinno had obtained the 8 gates technique. Activating this technique required an exceptional physique, and the body revival technique was perfectly suited to enhance one's physical prowess. After witnessing Shinno's strength, Orochimaru's desire for the body revival technique only grew stronger. Chapter 254, The Genius Puppeteer. After successfully repelling the joint assault from Sasori of the Red Sand and Orochimaru, a manic grin appeared on Shinno's face. His confidence soaring, he taunted them, "Orochimaru, if this is all you've got, you should get on your knees and beg for mercy now. Maybe, if I'm in a good mood, I'll let you both live." And, classic Chinese trope. Sigh. Hearing this, both Sasori and Orochimaru's expressions turned odd. This was Shinno's home turf in the Sky Ninja Village, true, but perhaps he was getting too confident. One of them was Orochimaru, the legendary Sannin who struck fear across the ninja world, and the other was Sasori of the Red Sand, the one who assassinated the third Kazekage. The two of them together could easily take on even the strongest Kage of the 5 great nations. Retrieving his puppets, Black Crow and Gray Ant, Sasori raised the scorpion tail on his back and struck toward Shinno with blinding speed, while Orochimaru swiftly closed in, drawing the Kusanagi sword from his mouth. As the two launched their renewed offensive, Shinno pressed off the ground with his toes and vanished from sight. In the blink of an eye, he reappeared beside Sasori, bringing a heavy fist down from above. The blow left only a shallow dent in Hiriko's metal casing. Without even turning, Sasori flicked his scorpion tail, piercing Shinno's skin and leaving a bloody wound, while Orochimaru seized the opportunity to slice across Shinno's body with his sword. Realizing he'd been wounded, Shinno quickly created some distance, clutching his head in frustration. Although the injuries inflicted by Sasori and Orochimaru weren't fatal, their weapons were laced with potent toxins. Even with his advanced medical knowledge, purging the poison would still take a significant amount of time. Seeing this, Sasori and Orochimaru paused their attack and began to approach Shinno. Their aim wasn't to kill him but to acquire his latest techniques and technology. They needed Shinno alive to get what they came for. Just as Sasori and Orochimaru were about to close in, Shinno, who appeared weakened, suddenly sprang up, his chakra surging to several times its previous level, distorting the air around him. In a flash, Shinno appeared beside them, unleashing powerful strikes with both arms. A thunderous impact resounded as Sasori and Orochimaru were sent flying over 10 meters, crashing into walls that cracked in a spiderweb pattern on impact. Climbing back to their feet, Sasori's face darkened. He hadn't expected Shinno to be immune to their poison. It seemed Shinno was even tougher than he had anticipated. It was time to get serious. Orochimaru's expression was equally grim. Judging by the color of the steam emanating from Shinno, he had opened the 7th of the 8 gates, coming dangerously close to the technique's ultimate limit. Shinno had clearly grown considerably over the years. His prowess in forbidden medical techniques now seemed to surpass even Tsunade's. Resolving to go all out, Sasori and Orochimaru made their preparations. Drawing out a summoning scroll, Sasori performed his summoning jutsu, bringing forth his most powerful puppet, the third Kazekage. Orochimaru, meanwhile, transformed his body into that of a massive white serpent. As a sinister breeze swept across the ground, a torrent of iron sand emerged from beneath the earth, forming a storm of metal that surged toward Shinno. Manipulated by Sasori's magnet release, the iron sand was both a piercing spear and an impenetrable shield. With the iron sand constraining him, Shinno struggled to find an opening. Orochimaru, gripping the Kusanagi sword in his serpent's mouth, waited for the perfect moment to strike, darting around the battlefield and studying Shinno's movements. Though Shinno had harnessed both the body revival technique and forbidden medical jutsu to activate the seventh gate of the 8 gates, this technique was not sustainable. Once his stamina was depleted and he fell out of this state, he would stand no chance against these two. Scanning his surroundings, Shinno's gaze lingered on Sasori. Orochimaru's serpent form had demonstrated formidable strength over the years, and finding a way to exploit him seemed unlikely. But Sasori, the puppeteer by Orochimaru's side, was different. While his strength rivaled Orochimaru's, puppeteers had unique vulnerabilities compared to typical ninja. For instance, their bodies tended to be fragile, and they relied on chakra threads to control their puppets. The chakra threads were nearly invisible and exceptionally tough, making it challenging for most ninjas to detect them, let alone sever them. However, for Shinno, who was highly skilled in medical ninjutsu, this task was less daunting. Intentionally creating an opening, he lured the third Kazekage puppet into an attack, enduring the searing pain as iron sand began to corrode his flesh. He then drew his chakra scalpel, slashing at the chakra threads suspending the puppet midair. With the chakra threads severed, the Kazekage puppet dropped like a kite with its string cut. Seizing the opportunity, Shinno leapt onto the puppet, preparing to close the distance to Sasori and shatter Hiriko with a powerful blow. But just as Shinno closed in, the seemingly lifeless Kazekage puppet sprang back to life. It swiftly conjured a spear of metal, thrusting it through Shinno's body, while a torrent of iron sand surged into his bloodstream. With his iron sand now within Shinno, Sasori gained complete control over him, casting a cold, disdainful glance at Orochimaru. Sasori had noticed Orochimaru's repeated reluctance to assist him during the battle. While Sasori had never relied on Orochimaru to back him up, he was irked by his partner's blatant disregard for their alliance. Had Sasori not mastered a technique for remote puppet control beforehand, he might have needed to consider a strategic retreat, only to return later with an army of puppets. Feeling the iron sand coursing through his veins, Shinno's face darkened. These particles, woven into his blood, could claim his life at any moment. He had lost the fight, and he had lost badly. Yet one question haunted him: how had he been defeated? He was sure he had severed every last chakra thread, and without them, a puppeteer should be unable to control their puppets. Orochimaru, too, was perplexed. He had purposely held back to gain a favor from Sasori, planning to intervene at the crucial moment. However, just as he prepared to step in, the Kazekage puppet, devoid of any visible energy source, had unexpectedly sprung to life, shifting the entire outcome of the battle with a single, precise strike to Shinno's back. Noticing the expressions on their faces, Sasori, stone-faced, said, "Controlling puppets with chakra threads is the method of an ordinary puppeteer. I'm not like those simpletons. Even without chakra threads, I can still control my puppets." Chapter 255, Recruitment work can sometimes rely on subordinates. A true puppet master can control their puppets without chakra threads. Your understanding of puppet techniques is shallow, Sasori said, his tone edged with disdain. Upon hearing this, Shinno and Orochimaru both fell silent. Sasori was right, they had indeed underestimated the full scope of puppet mastery, assuming that chakra threads were the only method. Shinno's loss, therefore, wasn't entirely unwarranted. Yet, Orochimaru was intrigued. If he had the chance, he'd love to uncover the mechanism behind Sasori's remote control. How Sasori managed it remained a mystery, sparking a hint of curiosity in him. Noticing their silence, Sasori felt a surge of satisfaction. He recalled his own sense of frustration years ago when he first saw Byakuya controlling puppets remotely, surpassing even Sasori's own expertise. As a puppeteer himself, realizing someone had exceeded his skills in his own field nearly shattered his ambitions. But after years of study and innovation, Sasori had finally managed to master similar techniques. With Byakuya's continued funding, Sasori could keep pushing his research, bringing him closer to his lifelong dream of becoming the greatest puppet master in the ninja world, a dream tied to the hopes his parents once held for him. Several years ago, his only goals had been to achieve immortality and to take revenge on Konoha. But spending time with Byakuya had altered his perspective. Byakuya had spoken of experimental efforts within the organization to resurrect the dead. If the project succeeded, Sasori might even have a chance to revive his parents, whom he'd lost in childhood. Returning to the present, Sasori refocused on the task Byakuya had given him. Moving to Shinno's side, he spoke coldly, "Shinno, you've lost. As a loser, you have no choice in this. Will you hand over the technology for the handheld kunai launcher willingly, or would you rather have us forcibly extract the memories from your mind?" "Just the handheld kunai launcher technology?" Shinno's eyes widened in slight surprise. "The plans are in the village. I'll have someone bring them to you. After that, will you let me go?" Only minutes ago, Shinno had appeared as the steadfast leader of the Sky Ninja. But when his life was on the line, his demeanor quickly softened. Hearing that Sasori only wanted the handheld kunai launcher relieved him, as that weapon wasn't particularly advanced within Sky Ninja technology. The handheld kunai launcher might seem innovative to the nations of the ninja world, but in Sky Ninja Village, it was standard fare. The ninjas of his village, though generally weak and of low rank, excelled in chakra technology and the development of chakra-based weaponry. More than 2 decades ago, they had even constructed a floating fortress. If not for energy shortages, they might not have lost their previous battle with Konoha. Ever since, Shinno had been searching for a permanent energy solution. At that moment, Orochimaru interjected, "And let's not forget the body revival technique." Sasori frowned. "The body revival technique wasn't part of our mission." "I'm against you taking it," he remarked, taking the opportunity to hinder Orochimaru's plans, though he wasn't exactly sure what the technique was. Orochimaru glanced at Sasori before speaking. "The leader didn't mention it, but I'm sure he wouldn't oppose us doing this. Don't you want to contribute to the organization?" Sasori hesitated for a moment, then replied, "Including the body revival technique, but it must be handed to me directly. Once I give it to the leader, let him decide what to do next." Hearing this, Orochimaru was still a little dissatisfied, but he nodded. As long as the body revival technique was in Byakuya's hands, it would be easy for Orochimaru to obtain it later. He could simply exchange some of his research results to get it. After hearing the exchange between Sasori and Orochimaru, Shinno asked with confusion, "Orochimaru, how do ninjas like you willingly serve under someone else? Is he really that strong?" Sasori and Orochimaru exchanged a glance and nodded. "The leader is extremely strong, strong enough to be our leader, but that probably has nothing to do with you." "Not entirely unrelated." Shinno forced a smile and said, "Sasori, Orochimaru, would you be willing to introduce me? I'd like to join your organization." At Shinno's suggestion, both Sasori and Orochimaru fell into thought. They often heard Byakuya complain about the lack of personnel in the organization. Given Shinno's strength and influence, he was qualified to join Akatsuki. However, they had only just created an enmity with Shinno, and they wondered whether his joining might cause unnecessary problems in the future. After much contemplation, Sasori and Orochimaru didn't immediately agree to Shinno's request. Instead, Sasori touched the ring on his finger and used a genjutsu to remotely contact Byakuya. Land of Snow. After the remote conversation ended, Byakuya lay leisurely on the bed, staring at the ceiling. An hour earlier, he had received a mission report from Orochimaru and Sasori. The report stated that the two had reached Sky Ninja Village and obtained the related data on the handheld kunai launcher's manufacturing. They also reported having defeated Shinno, who had opened the 7th gate of the 8 gates. Byakuya was not surprised that Shinno had mastered the 8 gates of Konoha. Although the 8 gates was a forbidden technique from Konoha, its secrecy was not as high as other forbidden jutsu, similar to the multiple shadow clone technique. The reason was simple: these two techniques didn't pose much threat to the ninja world. Even if the enemy acquired them, it wouldn't be a major issue. The only real danger was the physical toll they took on the user. For example, the multiple shadow clone technique allowed for the creation of many clones, but all the memories and fatigue were passed back to the user, and most ninjas couldn't handle it. It often led to mental exhaustion or even dementia. As for the 8 gates, it literally burned the user's life away for minimal return. In the time spent training to open the 8 gates, a ninja could learn other secret techniques much faster. Body techniques were ultimately only a last resort method for combat. It wasn't until Might Dai single-handedly defeated the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist that this technique gained some attention. Then, during the 4th Great Ninja War, a monster like Might Dai, who rivaled someone like Madara with nothing but his human body, made an even greater impact. At the end of the video call, Byakuya learned of Shinno's request to join the Akatsuki organization. For this request, Byakuya had no reason to refuse. Even if Shinno might eventually leave the organization, the rewards would not be returned. An opportunity to exploit the system was too good to pass up. Snapping back from his wandering thoughts, Byakuya heard the familiar system notification sound. Shinno has joined Akatsuki. You have obtained Dark Medical Ninjutsu, Body Revival Technique. Sky Ninja Village has joined Akatsuki. You have received kunai gun manufacturing data, aircraft manufacturing data, and basic chakra fragments. Chapter 256, The Reward from the Hidden Sky Village. Upon seeing the rewards of Dark Medical Ninjutsu and Body Revival Technique, Byakuya was momentarily stunned. However, through the system prompts and the memories in his mind, he quickly understood the purpose of these 2 secret techniques. In simple terms, both jutsus enhance the upper limit of physical strength while also offering some healing abilities and immunity to minor injuries. For Byakuya, who possessed traces of Asura's bloodline, these techniques served as the proverbial cherry on top. Currently, his healing capabilities might not match monsters like the late-game Orochimaru or 6 Paths Obito and Madara, but they were likely on par with the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju. It seemed that, compared to farming resources in Amage Cure, directly recruiting new members proved to be a faster way to earn rewards. However, the rewards from smaller villages like the Hidden Sky Village and the Land of Hot Water were still quite limited. Combined, they were no match for someone like Nagato, who possessed the Rinnegan. Clearing his thoughts, Byakuya shifted his attention to the conventional rewards, such as kunai gun techniques. These rewards wouldn't directly enhance his strength. Even crafting the chakra armor and kunai gun wouldn't give him a significant edge in battles against other Kage-level fighters. Instead, their greatest utility lay in boosting the overall strength of the Akatsuki organization. Although Jinin and Chunin only contributed modestly to the prosperity score, every bit added up. Their collective efforts significantly enhanced the organization's prosperity. His unique jutsus and bloodline limits stem from the elites under his command, Jonin and Kage-level fighters. Still, his foundational power was built upon the accumulation of efforts from ordinary ninjas. While he hadn't yet reached the level of a Super Kage, he was virtually invincible at the Kage level. After calming his wandering thoughts, Byakuya stepped out of the guest room and encountered Kyuki Kazahana in her traditional kimono. Compared to half a month ago, she had shed much of her youthful innocence and gained a more mature and composed demeanor. In the 2 weeks since defeating Dodo Kazahana, Koyoki, with the assistance of Konan and Sandayu, had taken control of the Land of Snow and officially become its daimyo. Although Koyoki lacked experience in governance, Sandayu and the Akatsuki organization had pledged their support. Until she came of age, they would help her manage the nation, gradually returning authority to her. "Good morning, Byakuya-sama." Koyoki greeted him quickly as she spotted him. Byakuya smiled and nodded. "Good morning. How does it feel to officially become the daimyo? Is it tougher than you imagined?" Koyoki let out a weary sigh, her fatigue evident. "It's definitely harder than before, but it's nothing compared to what you handle, Byakuya-sama." Byakuya's lips twitched slightly. In truth, he didn't manage much at all. The true powerhouses in the ninja world, though often the nominal leaders of their villages, seldom bothered with administrative affairs. For instance, Nagato of the Akatsuki, the 4th Raikage of Kumogakure, and even the first Hokage during his era were prime examples. They were figureheads with decision-making authority but delegated the day-to-day governance. The reason was simple: training to become stronger consumed too much mental energy, leaving little time for managing trivial matters. Unless a ninja chose to forego personal growth, dedicating themselves entirely to politics, they would inevitably become a mere politician vying for power, not a warrior on the battlefield. After offering a few words of encouragement, Byakuya brushed past Koyoki and headed to the office. As he walked away, Koyoki looked at his back, deep in thought. She was no longer the naive girl she had been 2 weeks ago. With a better understanding of the ninja world, she realized just how renowned Byakuya's name was. A ninja capable of going toe-to-toe with a Raikage at under 20 years old. This suggested that Byakuya might surpass the 5 Kage in the future. Given his age, he could remain a dominant figure on the chessboard for decades to come. For the Land of Snow, having such a powerhouse as their protector was nothing short of a blessing. In recent days, she had conversed with emissaries from Amegakure and learned about Akatsuki's ideals. Under their leadership, Amegakure had undergone a miraculous transformation. If the Land of Snow could achieve similar results under Akatsuki, would it matter if they became a vassal state? Compared to the honor of being a daimyo, she cared more about improving the lives of her people. If possible, she would have relinquished her position to pursue her dream of becoming an actress. But that was impossible. Byakuya needed her to remain as the Land of Snow's daimyo. Sandeya needed her too, as did the people of the Land of Snow. Later, Byakuya visited Conan's room, finding her engrossed in work. Noticing the approaching footsteps, Conan glanced up and frowned slightly. Byakuya, the Land of Snow's finances are in complete disarray. Dodo Kazahana funneled most of the budget into researching chakra armor. While assisting Sandeyu with the nation's affairs, Conan, who had a keen sense of financial matters, quickly identified the source of their fiscal troubles. Byakuya chuckled. If he hadn't done that, we wouldn't have a complete set of chakra armor technology. Conan's expression softened at his words. He was right. Without Dodo's obsession, the Land of Snow would never have developed such advanced chakra armor technology. However, his approach of exploiting the nation's resources was ultimately unsustainable. Continuing with the topic, Byakuya asked, "How's the transfer of the chakra armor technology going?" Yahiko has sent the 6 paths of Nagato to retrieve it. They'll arrive at the village soon. After a brief pause, Conan seemed to recall something and asked, "By the way, Byakuya, are you really committed to protecting the Land of Snow?" Akatsuki's influence doesn't fully extend here yet. Byakuya nodded slightly. For the safety of the Land of Rain, we must include the Land of Snow in our sphere of influence. It provides a secure rear base. The oil and gas resources underground are also essential for developing the village's industry. Besides, isn't Akatsuki's purpose to help more people experience the beauty of peace? Without us, the Land of Snow would eventually fall into the hands of another ambitious figure. Conan nodded in agreement. Previously, she had despised the major ninja villages for their disregard for smaller nations. But now that the Land of Rain had grown into a major power, she understood. She couldn't stop other large villages from exploiting small ones, but she could ensure the safety of those within Akatsuki's territory. Chapter 257, The Spy's Fate, Part 1. After the situation in the Land of Snow fully stabilized, Byakuya and Conan began their journey back to Amegakure. When the two arrived at the Land of Snow's port, the nation's reward for their efforts came belatedly. Compared to the profits from their conquest of the Sky Ninja Village, the reward from the Land of Snow was pitifully small. Aside from a few ice-release techniques that could only be used in polar conditions, the only other reward was fragments of chakra crystals. At first, Byakuya was puzzled, but he quickly figured it out. Nearly all of the Snow Ninja under the Land of Snow's banner had been annihilated by him and Conan, leaving the nation with few capable combatants. Although Dodo Kazahana had some skill, his death in the prison of the Land of Snow, possibly due to mental collapse, had left both Princess Koyoki Kazahana and Sandeyu Sama deeply regretful. On the way back, Byakuya chose not to take a direct ship route to the eastern Land of Fire. Instead, he decided to disembark in the Land of Earth to travel through it for a while and settle some arrangements from 5 years ago. Though Conan found his decision strange, she didn't ask too many questions. She was accustomed to Byakuya's enigmatic nature. As their journey through the land of Earth deepened, Conan began to sense something was off. If they were truly returning to the land of rain, they should have been following the coastline. Yet, Byakuya led her further into the heart of the land of Earth. Unable to contain her curiosity, Conan finally asked, "Byakuya, if we continue for 2 more days, we'll be at Iwagakure. Don't tell me you're planning to challenge the village." Iwagakure's Tsuchikage, Anokei of both scales, has mastered dust release, Akatsuki Toda. He's not someone to take lightly. It's better if we avoid provoking him for now. Byakuya's expression turned a bit pale. Did she really think he was someone who enjoyed stirring up trouble? As a transmigrant, Byakuya was well aware of dust release's power. It was the only Kekei Toda in the original timeline and could instantly obliterate even Susanoo. It was one of the most destructive techniques in the ninja world. If not for Anokei's frail body and the inflexibility of dust release, the Tsuchikage would have already achieved legendary status. While he might not have risen to the level of a god of shinobi like the first Hokage, he would have easily surpassed Hanzo of the Salamander, becoming 3/4 of a god. After all, the only way to reliably counter dust release was with dust release itself, or techniques that absorb chakra. Taking a deep breath, Byakuya explained, "I have a contact in Iwagakure. I came here to meet my subordinate and take care of some old business." Old business? Conan's eyes filled with doubt. What kind of old business could someone Byakuya's age have? And when had he even planted a spy in Iwagakure? As expected, Byakuya had plans for the village. She could only hope he wouldn't cause any earth-shattering trouble this time. Before long, Byakuya and Conan reached the rocky terrain outside Iwagakure. Using the highland rocks of the land of Earth as cover, they observed the barren village from afar. Iwagakure, the hidden village of the land of Earth, was built on the highlands. Its architecture was rugged and utilitarian, designed to maximize every resource available. Because of its harsh geographic environment, Iwagakure had always been an aggressor during the Ninja World Wars, targeting resource-rich nations like the Land of Fire and the Land of Grass. In contrast, the Land of Rain and the Land of Wind had never piqued Iwagakure's interest, largely due to their meager resources. Even in recent years, Iwagakure had not ceased its activities in neighboring small countries, constantly preparing to expand its influence. After patiently lying in wait in the rocky terrain for a while, a ninja wearing an Iwagakure headband quietly approached Byakuya and Conan's position. Just as Conan was about to act and eliminate the stone ninjas, Byakuya stopped her. "Conan, you're always saying I'm too impulsive and extreme, but you don't seem to hold back either." Conan's expression shifted slightly. She glanced at Byakuya with dissatisfaction, clearly annoyed. At this moment, the stone ninjas removed his headband, revealing an exceptionally delicate face. He smiled at Byakuya and Conan and said, "Lord Byakuya, I assume this is Lady Conan?" "DYM. Lady Conan is even younger and more beautiful than I imagined. She looks no older than 16. Hearing the compliment, Conan's expression softened. Although she was not yet 20, she was already 18. As always, a woman appreciated being thought of as younger. Byakuya glanced at the stone ninjas and spoke casually, all right, Kabuto Yakushi. Report the intelligence you've gathered recently. Staying here for long isn't safe." That's right, the stone ninjas was none other than Kabuto Yakushi, the spy Byakuya had cultivated in Konohagakure. 5 years ago, Kabuto had been brought under Byakuya's control. Following Byakuya's orders, he infiltrated Danzo's Root organization and diligently gathered information about both Konoha and Root. Byakuya's knowledge of Konoha largely came from 2 sources, White Zetsu and Kabuto Yakushi. Kabuto had never failed him, consistently delivering valuable intelligence that allowed Byakuya to stay informed about Konoha's inner workings without setting foot in the village. After the war between Konoha and Kumogakure ended, Kabuto was assigned a mission that took him to Iwagakure. For the past 2 years, he had been stationed there, continuing to send vital information back to Byakuya. Kabuto nodded in acknowledgement of Byakuya's words and began his report. The first piece of intelligence concerned Iwagakure's internal affairs. The 4th and 5th Jinchuriki, Rashi of the Four Tails and Han of the Five Tails, remained at odds with Anokei. The Tsuchikage's authoritarian leadership left the two deeply dissatisfied, yet they could do little about it. Anokei, as the disciple of the second Tsuchikage, had ruled Iwagakure for decades. In the eyes of the Stone Ninjas, his influence was second only to the first Raikage's legendary status. Confronting such a formidable leader, the Jinchuriki could only express their dissatisfaction by wandering aimlessly within the land of Earth. This behavior aligned perfectly with Byakuya's knowledge from his previous life. In the original timeline, had these two Jinchuriki not developed a habit of leaving the village, it would have been much harder for the Akatsuki to capture them. Unlike the weaker or less experienced Jinchuriki of the Six Tails and Seven Tails, Rashi and Han were exceptionally powerful, even without the support of their tailed beasts. The second piece of information pertained to a new prodigy in Iwagakure. Over the past 2 years, a young boy had emerged with remarkable talent. Despite only being enrolled in the Ninja Academy for 2 years, he had already achieved the strength of a Chunin and even a Chunin. This boy showed incredible aptitude in Earth Release and had even mastered Explosion Release at such a young age. Though not a Kekkei Genkai, Explosion Release had devastating destructive potential. If given time, this prodigy could very well grow into a Kage-level shinobi. However, this genius was a constant headache for Anokei. The boy caused chaos throughout Iwagakure with his endless explosions, leaving the entire village in disarray. The Tsuchikage had no choice but to take him as a student and impose strict disciplinary measures, including frequent confinement, to curb his antics. This prodigy's name? Deidara. Hearing the name, Byakuya froze for a moment, then a faint smile appeared on his lips. The name Deidara was all too familiar. This boy would one day become a stalwart member of the Akatsuki in the original timeline, a model employee and an unstoppable demolition expert. Chapter 258, The Spy's Fate, Part 2. Deidara, a genius youth from Iwagakure, mastered the secret technique of explosion release at a young age. With this ability, he could craft various bombs from clay and even achieve the power of flight. If all had gone as expected, Deidara might have married Kuratsuchi and paved his way to becoming the 4th Tsuchikage. However, fate played a cruel trick on him. During a rebellious escapade to avoid confinement, Deidara encountered an Uchiha who would alter his destiny forever. After losing to Itachi Uchiha, Deidara joined the Akatsuki, severing any ties to the position of Tsuchikage. Pulling his wandering thoughts back, Byakuya resumed gathering other critical pieces of information, such as the economic state of Iwagakure and its recent policies. Although these details lacked immediate tactical value, their strategic significance was undeniable. Kabuto nodded, recounting his observations from within Iwagakure. By the end of the briefing, Byakuya had a clear understanding of the village's current condition. After 5 years of recuperation and recovery, Iwagakure had not yet returned to its peak strength from before the Third Great Ninja War. Still, its power could not be underestimated as it retained the capacity to ignite a new conflict. Instructing Konan to document the intelligence, Byakuya fixed his gaze on Kabuto and asked, "Kabuto, has Danzo assigned any new tasks recently?" Hearing Byakuya mention Danzo, Konan paused in mild surprise. She was no stranger to that name. Danzo, a high-ranking official of Konohagakure and an enemy of the Akatsuki, was infamous. That Byakuya had managed to plant a spy within Danzo's root organization astounded her. Nevertheless, Konan harbored no objections to Byakuya's infiltration tactics. Danzo and Jiraiya, her former teacher, were political adversaries. Danzo's collusion with Hanzo years ago had nearly wiped out the Akatsuki. Were it not for his constant presence within Konoha, they might have sent someone to assassinate him long ago. Kabuto extended his tongue, revealing the small but unmistakable cursed tongue eradication seal. This unique mark, a signature curse of root, prevented its bearers from leaking information. It was this very seal on Kabuto that barred him from divulging root secrets. After a moment of contemplation, Byakuya formed hand seals and pressed them onto Kabuto's shoulder. Kabuto felt a surge of chakra flow through him, and the cursed tongue eradication seal was dispelled. Realizing this, Kabuto's gaze toward Byakuya filled with admiration. Byakuya-sama's abilities exceeded his expectations. Even a high-level seal like the cursed tongue eradication seal was no match for him. Noticing Kabuto's expression, Byakuya chuckled. The cursed tongue eradication seal is derived from Uzumaki sealing techniques. Breaking it is no challenge for me. Now, tell me about Root and Danzo. What's Danzo been up to recently? Kabuto hesitated before replying, Byakuya-sama, I haven't returned to Root in a long time. I'm unaware of its current situation. After completing this mission, I'll be able to provide you with more detailed information. What mission? Byakuya's eyes flickered with interest. He had a hunch about Kabuto's assignment but feigned curiosity. Kabuto answered without hesitation, it's a mission to eliminate a traitor. A Root spy embedded in a Wabakura has turned rogue, and Danzo has tasked me with taking care of him. As expected, Byakuya thought. He retrieved a water bottle and handed it to Kabuto. Do you have any information or evidence about this traitor's defection? Taking the bottle, Kabuto shook his head. Danzo didn't provide any intelligence. He only instructed me to seize the opportunity during the next rendezvous to deal with the traitor. Byakuya-sama, do you think there's something suspicious about this mission? Of course, there's an issue, Byakuya analyzed calmly. If this traitor had genuinely betrayed Konoha, Danzo would have given you the necessary information. Instead, he told you nothing. He paused before continuing, moreover, this Root Ninja's mission was the same as yours, gathering intelligence in the land of Earth. You've never interacted before, which in itself is suspicious. Unless Danzo anticipated the betrayal from the beginning and deliberately assigned you to eliminate them. Kabuto fell into deep thought as he listened to Byakuya's reasoning before he quickly grasped the gravity of the situation. Being naturally perceptive, Kabuto soon realized the severity of the matter. Based on Byakuya-sama's analysis, Danzo's mission was riddled with suspicious points. Either Danzo intended to use Kabuto to deal with a ninja who had shown disloyalty to him, or, more troublingly, the so-called traitor to be eliminated was Kabuto himself. Otherwise, Danzo would have provided sufficient information, at the very least specifying the target of the mission. The thought sent a chill down Kabuto's spine. He turned to Byakuya and said earnestly, "Thank you for the warning, Byakuya-sama. Without your insight, I might have fallen into Danzo's trap." Byakuya smiled and helped Kabuto to his feet. "Kabuto, I value your talents greatly. Why would I let you come to harm? Your future holds far more than just this." Kabuto couldn't understand why Byakuya treated him so kindly, but he remained deeply grateful. Without Byakuya's covert support, the orphanage run by the director would have collapsed long ago, and the other children raised there would never have had the chance to lead normal lives. After a brief pause, Kabuto asked, "Byakuya-sama, what should I do next? Should I continue the mission or leave with you?" "Carry on with the mission," Byakuya replied. "I want to see exactly who Danzo is targeting." "Yes, Byakuya-sama." Kabuto nodded. With Byakuya's guidance, even if the Root traitor turned out to be as skilled as an elite jonin, there was no need to fear. Still, a sense of foreboding crept into Kabuto's mind. He had a dreadful hunch about the identity of the target. After meeting with Kabuto, Byakuya and Konan lingered near Wabakura for several days. While some intelligence could be gathered through hearsay, certain truths required on-site investigation. Byakuya didn't necessarily plan to take action against Iwabakure, but since it was Anokei's domain, it was prudent to prepare. One night, Kabuto contacted Byakuya for another meeting. Upon regrouping, the trio headed to the location where Kabuto was supposed to meet the Root Trader. The meeting spot was a secret training ground near Iwabakure. Normally off-limits as a restricted area, it served as the perfect rendezvous point. Half an hour later, a shadowy figure wearing a straw hat appeared in the training ground's dimly lit corner. The individual's chakra signature revealed traces of a transformation jutsu, and their movements down the cliffside were practiced and precise. Sensing the person's chakra, Byakuya turned to the anxious Kabuto and remarked with a knowing smile, "Kabuto, so this is who Danzo wants you to handle. That old bitch hasn't changed a bit, still as ruthless as ever." Chapter 259, The Spy's Fate, Part 3. She is. Hearing Byakuya's words, Kabuto's face turned pale, and his breathing grew rapid. He had already deduced the identity of the target. The traitor Danzo wanted him to eliminate was most likely none other than the orphanage director, Nono Yakushi. The reasoning was straightforward. Due to the cursed tongue eradication seal, very few within Root opposed Danzo. Those who did were either people with sensitive identities or individuals even Danzo wouldn't dare provoke. The only exception was the director, who had long since left Root. Once a vital member of Root, the director had achieved great merit during the Second Shinobi World War. However, disillusioned with Danzo's methods, she eventually left the organization. Danzo viewed his Root operatives as tools, and the director's defiance would have undoubtedly angered him. As for why the director had rejoined Root after leaving, Kabuto had already surmised the reason. She likely returned out of concern for his safety. But he hadn't anticipated Danzo's malice to be so twisted, setting up a scheme that would force him and the director into a deadly confrontation. If not for Byakuya's intervention, tonight would have ended with him and the director gravely wounded, or worse, a disastrous outcome too painful to imagine. Hatred for Danzo, and even Konoha, began to simmer in Kabuto's heart. However, with Byakuya's foresight and ability to uncover Danzo's conspiracy, such a tragedy wouldn't occur. Instead, he was about to reunite with the director after 5 long years. Taking a deep breath, Kabuto removed his mask, put on the glasses gifted to him by the director, and stepped toward Nono Yakushi. In his mind, once he revealed his face, the director would immediately recognize him and embrace him with joy. To his shock, Nono pulled out a kunai from her sleeve and, in a flash, lunged at him. Kabuto quickly dodged and blocked the attack, confusion filling his heart. Why didn't the director recognize him? Had 5 years changed his appearance so much that she no longer remembered him? Or had she completely forgotten who Kabuto was? The thought caused a sharp pain in his chest, as if his heart itself was aching. Unable to accept the cruel reality, Kabuto shouted, "Director, have you forgotten me?" Nono ignored his plea, retreating to perch on a large rock nearby. Scanning her surroundings, her gaze locked onto Byakuya and Konan. Her eyes filled with doubt. The mission Danzo assigned her involved only one traitor. Why were there 3 people here? Moreover, the other 2 seemed far too composed, raising an ominous suspicion in her mind. Could it be that the village's traitor had known she would come tonight and had brought reinforcements to capture her alive? The thought made her wary. She wasn't ready to die in a wabikure. At that moment, Byakuya used the body flicker technique to appear beside Nono and Kabuto. His tone was laced with mockery as he addressed Kabuto. "Kabuto, it seems your director has forgotten you. Do you need some time to cry it out and relieve your frustrations?" Seeing Byakuya's speed, Nono sank into despair. She realized escape was impossible. This man was likely one of a Wabikure's high-ranking officials, or at the very least, a member of their assassination unit. Although she bore the title of Wandering Shrine Maiden and served as a special jonin en route, her combat abilities were far from impressive. She specialized in intelligence gathering, not battle. At best, she could be considered a mediocre chunin in terms of raw combat power. However, upon hearing Kabuto's name, Nono froze. Why would he mention that name? Could this glasses-wearing young man be her adopted child, Kabuto? Her voice trembled as she asked cautiously, "Who are you? Why are you here? And how do you know the name Kabuto?" Byakuya shrugged and answered casually, "You'll have to ask him yourself. He received the same mission as you, to eliminate you." Nono's expression shifted rapidly, disbelief and realization dawning on her. Her gaze fell on Kabuto's glasses, the very pair she had gifted him years ago. Why were they now on someone else? Taking a deep breath, Nono asked carefully, "Are you Kabuto?" Kabuto nodded and began recounting secrets only the two of them would know. He also produced several items to further prove his identity. After repeated confirmations, Nono finally accepted that this young man before her was indeed the child she had raised, her Kabuto. However, the question remained, why was Kabuto here in Iwagakure, and who were the two ninjas standing beside him? Sensing the confusion in Nono Yakushi's eyes, Kabuto quickly explained. "Director, Danzo sent me here. I've been on assignment in Iwagakure for the past 2 years. I never imagined my final mission would involve eliminating you. Danzo also told me this was my last task. It seems he never intended for either of us to survive. I shouldn't have returned to Root." As he spoke, Nono felt a wave of dread wash over her. Her original intent in accepting this mission was to protect Kabuto, but Danzo had given her an assignment to eliminate him. Listening to the exchange between Kabuto and Nono, Konan frowned deeply. She had always considered Danzo an irreconcilable enemy. Given the chance, she would gladly take him down. However, she had believed that their differences were solely ideological. Danzo, though despicable, was a respectable adversary. His ruthless tactics, both in the Hidden Rain village and against other ninja villages, were all part of his vision for Konoha's future. He was willing to play the villain in the shadows, just as Byakuya was. But to learn that Danzo had gone so far as to pit his own subordinates against one another, this was a betrayal beyond mere politics. This was a direct violation of the Will of Fire, and it revealed just how rotten Konoha's leadership had become. After exchanging pleasantries with Kabuto, Nono turned her gaze to Byakuya and Konan, then asked Kabuto, "Kabuto, who are these two ninjas with you?" Kabuto hesitated, glancing at Nono before answering in a soft, uncertain voice. "Director, do you remember the extra donations that appeared at the orphanage 5 years ago? Those were from Byakuya. He met with me long before that and even taught me some techniques." "What?" Nono gasped, her eyes widening in shock. "You were in contact with someone outside the orphanage 5 years ago?" Nono stared at Kabuto, feeling as though she no longer understood him. Chapter 260, The Art of Explosion and the Explosion of Art. This. Kabuto hesitated, unsure whether he should speak. In front of others, he could keep secrets well, but his resolve wavered when it came to the director. Seeing his reaction, Nono refrained from pressing further. Whether Kabuto was a spy infiltrating the orphanage or someone trained there to become one, she was certain their familial bond was genuine. If her questioning would put Kabuto in a difficult position, she decided it was better not to ask. Moreover, after being betrayed by Danzo multiple times, her faith in the Konoha leadership had completely eroded. If the third Hokage was truly as wise and capable as he was reputed to be, could he really be unaware of Danzo's actions? Perhaps he had even tacitly approved of sacrifices being made to maintain stability. Nono wasn't afraid of sacrifice. The title of Walking Maiden testified to her contributions to Konoha. What she couldn't accept was being betrayed by the village she had served so diligently. Danzo had even issued an order for her and Kabuto to kill each other. Was this truly the Will of Fire? Pulling herself out of her spiraling thoughts, Nono's gaze shifted to Byakuya and Konan. When Kabuto had mentioned the name Byakuya, it struck her as familiar. After some reflection, she recalled who he was. Byakuya was a former disciple of the demigod Hanzo and had once assisted Konoha in its war against Kumogakure. Logically, his relationship with Konoha's leadership should have been good. Why, then, would he be secretly nurturing Kabuto? Could it be those relations between Konoha and Amagakure were not as strong as they appeared? After pondering for a moment, Nono approached Byakuya with a faint smile. "Lord Byakuya, thank you for looking after Kabuto. If it weren't for you, I don't know how we would have gotten through today." Byakuya nodded nonchalantly and replied, "It was nothing. But what are your plans now, Miss Nono? Will you return to Konoha, or defect from the village?" Hearing this, Nono sighed softly. "Since Danzo has issued such an order, I have no reason to remain in the village. But if I defect, it will undoubtedly affect Kabuto and the other children. And so, Lord Byakuya, do you have any suggestions? Seeing how perceptive Nono was, Byakuya immediately responded. Why not abandon your past identity and join Amagekure as someone who no longer exists? Unlike Konoha, we of Amagekure do not betray our comrades. Kabuto chimed in from the side. Director, Lord Byakuya is absolutely right. Haven't you always wanted to start over with a new identity? Amagekure is your best option. Nono was silent for a few seconds, but her mind was already made up. Given the current circumstances, joining Amagekure was her only choice. Moreover, the person she cared about most, Kabuto, was already under Byakuya's protection. She had no— Lord Byakuya, I'll be counting on your guidance from now on. As Byakuya extended his hand to welcome her into their ranks, he suddenly sensed danger. Quickly dodging, he narrowly avoided an explosion as flames erupted where he had just stood. Amid the deafening blast, a figure appeared before them. The newcomer wore the uniform of a Wagakure shinobi, with long blonde hair tied in a ponytail. His youthful face was that of defiance, exuding a wild arrogance. Before Byakuya and Konan could react, Nono and Kabuto had already recognized the blonde youth and shouted. Lord Byakuya, he's Deidara, Iwagakure's prodigy. Deidara. Hearing the name, Byakuya narrowed his eyes and began scrutinizing the genius from Iwagakure. Though young, Deidara's chakra levels were comparable to a Chunan's. The explosive clay attack just now would have been difficult for most Chunin or even Chunin to evade. Unfortunately, a genius who has yet to fully mature is still just a genius. Sensing something was off, Deidara's gaze grew wary as he sized up Byakuya and the others, beginning to question their identities. He had escaped from a confinement room and come straight to the training grounds outside the village, hoping to vent his frustrations amidst the mountains and rocks. The explosive clay he had just used was meant as a lesson for the inattentive guards. But now, it seemed these people weren't from the village. Two of them weren't even wearing village forehead protectors, and their behavior was suspicious. They didn't look like good people at all. Could he have stumbled upon a meeting between enemies and spies tonight? Deidara's lips curled into a faint smile. Finally, he had an excuse to unleash his art freely. If this was an enemy infiltration, no matter how much havoc he caused, that old man Anokei wouldn't reprimand him. Deidara reached into his pouch, retrieving a handful of white clay. He let the mouths on his palms chew the material for a few seconds, infusing it with chakra. Then, shaping the clay into the form of a bird, he directed it to fly straight toward Byakuya. Despite the incoming threat of the explosive clay, Byakuya remained calm, even finding the situation slightly amusing. Back when I was playing with explosive tags, this brat was still wetting his pants, he thought to himself. Deidara laughed as he watched his creation soar through the air. Witness the greatness of my art. My art is an explosion, kaboom. What Deidara didn't expect was for his explosive clay bird to be intercepted midair before it even hit the ground. Surrounding it were dozens of explosive tags, which detonated the bird prematurely in a brilliant flash. The person responsible was none other than Konan. Intrigued by the power of Deidara's explosive clay, she decided to intervene and test this upstart. As the explosion lit up the night sky, the shockwave rippled through the area, causing everyone's clothes to flap violently in the blast's aftermath. Deidara, however, wasn't angered by the interception. Instead, he laughed. So, you're also a ninja who appreciates the artistry of explosions. But when it comes to true talent in art, there's no way you can outshine me. With that, Deidara retrieved even more explosive clay, his face alight with excitement. It had been a long time since he'd encountered another ninja who specialized in explosive techniques, and the blue-haired woman before him was the first in years to truly pique his interest. Konan, on the other hand, felt a twinge of annoyance at Deidara's antics. The reckless enthusiasm reminded her of Byakuya from 5 or 6 years ago. Still, her strength had grown considerably since then, and she was more than capable of handling this problematic youth. With a mere thought, hundreds of explosive tags materialized around her and surged toward Deidara in unison. Her intent was clear. she wanted to subdue Deidara with a demonstration of her own explosive expertise and teach the arrogant young ninja a lesson. In an instant, explosive clay collided with explosive tags, illuminating the darkened landscape with dazzling fireworks. The ground trembled under the force of the successive blasts, each one echoing like a thunderclap across the battlefield. Chapter 261, Byakuya, who respects the elderly and loves the young. As the battle between Deidara and Konan reached a fever pitch, both began using explosive tags and explosive clay without holding back, hoping to determine the ultimate winner through mutual bombardment. The synergy between the two caused the surrounding landscape to be riddled with craters, as if it had endured a war of the shinobi world. Faced with such a scale of combat, Byakuya remained unfazed, having grown accustomed to such spectacles. Moreover, he already knew the outcome of the battle. Although Konan and Deidara currently appeared evenly matched, the reality was that Konan was merely feigning weakness to mislead her opponent. How could she have only a few hundred explosive tags? Carrying tens of thousands of them was standard for her. If Konan truly became intent on killing, Deidara wouldn't last even a minute. Standing nearby, Kabuto and Nono couldn't read Byakuya's thoughts. They were already deeply shaken by the scene of the battle. The way Konan and Deidara fought exceeded their imagination and understanding. Shouldn't battles between shinobi involve casting a few ninjutsu techniques, then engaging in taijutsu to find a flaw in the opponent's defenses and end the fight? In their perception, the scale of the battle between Konan and Deidara was approaching that of the Knight of the Nine Tails. After more than 10 minutes without a conclusive result, Kabuto cautiously approached Byakuya and asked, "Lord Byakuya, shouldn't we provide support to Lady Konan?" "Why should we support Konan?" Byakuya glanced at Kabuto, chuckling lightly. "Don't you see that Konan is just playing with Deidara? Deidara is still a child. How could an adult go all out against a child?" Kabuto fell silent. His suggestion seemed to have been unnecessary. But Byakuya's words were utterly exasperating. What did he mean by an adult wouldn't go all out against a child? Byakuya wasn't that much older himself, and he clearly hadn't considered Deidara's feelings. After all, Kabuto had been with Root for 5 years and still wasn't as strong as Deidara was now. Sensing Kabuto's thoughts, Byakuya spoke earnestly, "Don't be discouraged. I believe you'll surpass Deidara in the future. I trust your talent. You're the kind of shinobi who grows steadily over time." Kabuto nodded, falling into the trap of Byakuya's motivational speech. At that moment, Byakuya suddenly sensed something. Glancing first in the direction of Iwagakure, then at Deidara, who was still fighting Konan, before he turned to Kabuto and Nono, "Kabuto, Nono, Iwagakure's reinforcements are coming. You two should find a place to hide. The upcoming battle isn't something you can participate in." Kabuto and Nono looked toward Iwagakure and solemnly nodded. Considering the scale of the fight between Konan and Deidara, it made sense that Iwagakure would notice. But for Byakuya to stay behind while they fled, did he really intend to take on the entirety of Iwagakure? After Kabuto and Nono left, Byakuya's figure flickered, heading toward Iwagakure. Landing atop a massive boulder, he waited patiently for a few minutes before spotting an elderly figure flying through the sky, scanning the ravaged terrain nervously. The old man was none other than Anokei, the third Tsuchikage of Iwagakure, and one of the shinobi Byakuya respected most in the shinobi world. As Byakuya observed Anokei, the latter noticed him as well. Slowing his flight, Anokei hovered in midair, fixing his gaze on Byakuya. Though Anokei could confirm that this person wasn't from Iwagakure, he couldn't immediately identify him. One thing was certain: anyone appearing outside Iwagakure's borders likely had ill intentions. Descending near Byakuya, Anokei narrowed his eyes. "Unknown shinobi, state your purpose for appearing near Iwagakure. Otherwise, I'll make you regret ever becoming a ninja." Raising his hands, Byakuya waved them lightly and said, "Lord Tsuchikage, don't be so irritable. I'm just touring the land of Earth. I came here because I thought the scenery was nice." Anokei's expression turned peculiar, his face darkening as he replied, "Do you take me for a fool? You're touring the land of Earth and ended up near Iwagakure? And those explosions just now, weren't they your doing?" Who are you, and what is your mission? With an innocent expression, Byakuya explained. Lord Tsuchikage, I didn't cause any damage, but there was a blonde kid riding a big bird who flew past just now, bombing indiscriminately with something or other. Anokei's face twitched, and his lips curled slightly. A blonde kid, bombing indiscriminately, these traits immediately brought to mind his apprentice, Deidara. Hadn't Deidara just been confined? How had he escaped again? This time, once Deidara was caught, Anokei resolved to discipline him thoroughly and suppress those troublesome artistic tendencies. Having decided how to deal with Deidara in his mind, Anokei turned his attention back to Byakuya. Flying toward him, Anokei said sternly, "Stop dodging my question. You still haven't clearly explained your identity. You want to know my identity? Why not just ask directly?" Byakuya stood up from the boulder and said calmly, "I'm Byakuya, the leader of the Akatsuki, the second in command of Amegakure, and a disciple of Hanzo. If there's nothing else, I'll be on my way." He added with a faint smile, "You wouldn't want to provoke a conflict between Iwagakure and Amegakure by acting against me, would you?" As he spoke, Byakuya patted the dust off his clothing, looking ready to leave at any moment. Anokei's expression fluctuated as he processed Byakuya's words. Flying to block Byakuya's path, he suddenly recalled who Byakuya was. Aside from being a disciple of Hanzo and a high-ranking figure in Amegakure, Byakuya had also clashed directly with the Fourth Raikage during the war between Konoha and Kumogakure. Anokei was well aware of the Fourth Raikage's strength, undeniably one of the top-tier powerhouses in the shinobi world. For Byakuya to hold his own against the Fourth Raikage, even briefly, his power couldn't be underestimated. For such a formidable figure to appear near Iwagakure without prior notice, it was highly suspicious. Perhaps he was here to gather intelligence or even lay the groundwork for undermining Iwagakure in the future. After blocking Byakuya, Anokei narrowed his eyes and said, "Byakuya, I already told you, don't think you can just brush off my questions. The explosions might not have been your doing, but your presence here still raises too many questions. I need answers." Byakuya furrowed his brows and said, "Lord Tsuchikage, I've already told you the commotion had nothing to do with me. Why are you so persistent? Do you actually want to fight me?" he asked, his tone laced with playful defiance. "I'm someone who respects the elderly and cherishes the young. I don't make a habit of bullying old men. If I accidentally hurt you, Lord Tsuchikage, it might trigger a war between Iwagakure and Amegakure. That would undo the hard-earned peace we've achieved. Respect the elderly? Not bully old men?" Hearing Byakuya's words, Anokei's face turned red with anger. He was the Tsuchikage of Iwagakure, one of the 5 great shinobi villages, and among the most powerful and influential shinobi in the world. Sure, he was advanced in age, but being outright referred to as an old man was infuriating. This, he could not tolerate. Chapter 262, Dust Release, Detachment of the Primitive World. Provoked by Byakuya's taunts, Anokei initiated an attack. He first descended to the ground, forming hand seals before slamming his palms onto the earth. Instantly, he lifted a massive boulder weighing several tons and hurled it violently toward Byakuya's position. With a swift movement, Byakuya vanished and easily evaded the falling rock. He reappeared atop another boulder, his face brimming with mockery. Anokei's expression darkened. Without hesitation, he performed the rock fist technique, encasing his arms in a dense layer of stone armor. With enhanced strength, he lunged at Byakuya. A loud boom echoed as Anokei's punch struck Byakuya, sending him hurtling back dozens of meters. Anokei's lips curled into a satisfied smile. Mastery of the lightened boulder technique allowed him to decrease the weight of the rock for swift movement and then amplify gravity upon impact, multiplying the destructive force of his punches. Anokei thought to himself, after taking a hit like this, even if he isn't dead, he should be incapacitated. Not many shinobi can withstand my strikes. However, Byakuya, who had been knocked back, slowly stood up, dusting himself off. With a calm yet playful tone, he said, "Lord Tsuchikage, your punch is indeed powerful. But if this is all you've got, I'm afraid it won't be enough to take me down." Anokei's eyes narrowed as he scrutinized Byakuya more seriously. He was well aware of his own strength. If Byakuya had evaded the rock fist technique, it would have been understandable. After all, the move wasn't known for its accuracy. But Byakuya had taken the hit head-on and shrugged it off. That was a completely different story. In Iwagakure, few could endure his rock fist technique. Besides the Jinchuriki Rashi and Han, the only other person capable was his own son, Kitsuchi. Yet Kitsuchi, despite being a pinnacle-level jonin, hadn't been entrusted with the role of fourth Tsuchikage. This was partly because he hadn't mastered Dust Release, which failed to win unanimous support from the other jonin. Another reason was his reserved and overly cautious personality, making him unfit for leadership. Instead, Anokei had pinned his hopes on Deidara, a young genius, as a potential successor. Shaking off his wandering thoughts, Anokei turned back to Byakuya, feigning composure. Don't misunderstand. I was merely intrigued by your talent. Why would I use my full strength against a young man? Byakuya's face twitched slightly. Those words sounded uncomfortably familiar. He had used the same reasoning to describe Deidara earlier. Anokei pressed on. I'll give you a chance to admit your mistake. Surrender now, and I promise not to harm you. He wasn't lying. Killing Byakuya, the disciple of Hanzo, would irreparably sour relations between Iwagakure and Amegakure, possibly pushing Amegakure into Konoha's camp. That would block Iwagakure's expansion and make Konoha an even greater threat. It would be far more advantageous to capture Byakuya and use him to secure benefits from Hanzo, perhaps even an alliance against Konoha or Kumogakure. Byakuya, however, chuckled dismissively. I'll have to decline your generous offer. He had no intention of complying. Meeting Anokei was one of the key objectives of his trip to Iwagakure, and there was no way he'd let this opportunity slip. In a flash, Byakuya vanished and reappeared before Anokei, his blade drawn. The sharp edge sliced through Anokei's robes, but the figure crumbled into chunks of stone, revealing it to be a rock clone. Anokei's face darkened. Though the clone had absorbed the strike, Byakuya's attack proved he possessed the ability to threaten Anokei directly. There was no longer a need to hold back. Floating several dozen meters into the air using the lightened boulder technique, Anokei brought his hands together, focusing his chakra. Within moments, a dazzling light appeared between his hands, forming into a cuboid-shaped barrier. The barrier, moving at an imperceptible speed, shot toward Byakuya. Recognizing the danger of the dust release, detachment of the primitive world technique, Byakuya dodged using the body flicker technique. He turned to observe the aftermath. The ground where the dust release struck was perfectly smooth, leaving a seamless pit that silently demonstrated its destructive power. Although the destructive power of dust release was terrifying, it wasn't without counters. The Rinnegan's ability to seal chakra was a perfect counter to dust release, and Byakuya just so happened to possess such an ability. With a decisive thought, Byakuya initiated his counterattack. First, forming hand seals, he summoned a torrent of rushing water, masking his movements. Using the water as a cover, he vanished from Anokei's sight. In the next moment, the ground trembled violently, and thick vines burst forth from the earth. In an instant, the barren, desolate red plateau transformed into a lush forest brimming with life. Anokei's eyes widened in shock, his expression filled with disbelief. Would release? That technique was lost decades ago. How is it possible for someone to use it now? And not a Konoha shinobi, but someone from Amegakure? There was no time for further contemplation. Anokei began to move swiftly through the forest, keeping a constant guard against the attacking vines. However, he soon realized the futility of his efforts. While his dust release could easily obliterate the vines, destroying one led to the rapid regrowth of others. They relentlessly sought his position, encroaching faster than he could eliminate them. Anokei grimaced. Unless he could completely eradicate the entire forest in one attack, victory seemed unattainable. Determined, he ascended higher into the sky, his hands clasped together as he gathered chakra. A massive cubic barrier, spanning several dozen meters, materialized in the air. Anokei hurled the barrier toward the ground, where it descended with devastating speed. As the cube struck, a light brighter than the sun erupted, accompanied by a deafening silence. When the brilliance faded, it revealed a massive pit, tens of meters deep. The pit was devoid of any trace of life. Soil, rock, and minerals had been utterly annihilated, reduced to their atomic forms. Yet even after such destruction, Byakuya's presence lingered, undeterred by the catastrophic attack. Chapter 263, Negotiation. Under the cleansing power of dust release, the vines and rocks disintegrated into their atomic states. After completing the technique, Anokei steadied himself, clutching his aging back, and used sensory ninjutsu to confirm no remaining chakra signatures in the vicinity. Finally, he let out a long, relieved sigh. He hadn't initially intended to unleash such a massive dust release technique. The immense chakra cost and uncontrollable power risked harming Byakuya, potentially souring the relationship between Iwagakure and Amegakure. However, the moment he saw the wood release technique, an inexplicable fear rose within him, compelling him to escalate his attack. Decades ago, a young Anokei, only 13 years old, had accompanied his teacher, the second Tsuchikage Mu, on a visit to Kanagakure. There, he encountered his lifelong nightmare, Madara Uchiha. With unrivaled power, Madara had crushed both him and his teacher, leaving a permanent mark on Anokei's memory. That terrifying figure, however, was eventually defeated by the first Hokage through the overwhelming might of wood release. Thus, even if it came at a great cost, Anokei was determined to eliminate Byakuya, a potential wood release user. He feared the re-emergence of such a force in the ninja world, even if Byakuya wasn't nearly as powerful as the first Hokage. Finally rid of this trouble. "I'll need a proper rest after this," he muttered to himself. As if responding to his musings, Byakuya suddenly appeared in front of him. Startled, Anokei instinctively stepped back a few paces, his voice tinged with shock. "Jesus! Are you human or ghost?" "Of course, I'm human," Byakuya said, stepping closer with a feigned look of lingering fear. "Still, Tsuchikage-sama's dust release is truly formidable. If my real body had been in the forest just now, I might not have survived." "You anticipated my use of dust release?" Anokei's shoulders turned down. He knew the biggest weakness of dust release was its hit-or-miss nature. Byakuya nodded. "Tsuchikage-sama's mastery of dust release is famous, so naturally, I was prepared for it. Only a fool would try to withstand dust release head-on." Anokei fell silent. Byakuya's words were undeniably true, no one would willingly face dust release directly. Yet, as Byakuya stood so close, Anokei calculated his chances. He still had a considerable amount of chakra left. If he seized this opportunity to strike, would victory be within reach? After a brief consideration, Anokei dismissed the idea. He couldn't be sure if the Byakuya in front of him was the real body or a wood clone. If he exhausted all his chakra on a gamble, he might end up defeated by Byakuya, a humiliation unworthy of a Kage. Sensing Anokei's thoughts, Byakuya's expression turned serious. "Tsuchikage-sama, I suggest you hold back. Otherwise, I might truly get angry. After all, I only came here as a tourist, yet you've attacked me repeatedly." Anokei's expression also hardened, adopting a more equal stance as he responded. "Enough with the banter. State your true purpose. What deal do you want to strike with me?" Byakuya shrugged and said casually. "I'm honestly just passing through. I only stepped in to rescue my subordinate. If it weren't for your disciple Deidara inexplicably bombing us, we would have left Iwagakure long ago." "So, it's Deidara's fault?" Anokei silently cursed Deidara in his heart. The young man's obsession with explosive art had not only caused trouble for others but nearly cost Anokei dearly against Byakuya. But then, why was Byakuya's subordinate near Iwagakure in the first place? Thinking of this, Anokei sneered coldly. "Why was your subordinate near Iwagakure's borders? Was he a spy infiltrating my village, caught by our defenses?" Byakuya shook his head. "It wasn't your shinobi. It was Konoha's ninja who attacked my subordinate. Anokei looked doubtful. Your Amagekure has good relations with Konoha. Why would they target your ranged shinobi? Tsuchikage-sama should know that between nations, there are no friends, only interests. After a pause, Byakuya added, besides, the years of war in Amagekure's history can't be separated from Konoha's meddling. I personally hold little goodwill toward them. Is that so? Anokei remained skeptical, his mind beginning to piece together Byakuya's motives and background. Based on the information obtained from Iwagakure, Byakuya and others such as Yahiko, who are part of the leadership of Amagekure, were originally wandering orphans in the Land of Rain. Later, Yahiko and his group were mentored by Jiraiya, one of the 3 legendary Sannin of Konoha. As for who trained Byakuya, Iwagakure's intelligence department has never reached a clear conclusion. Some speculate that Byakuya might be a descendant of a long-extinct ninja clan, otherwise, it would be impossible for him to possess such strength at a young age. After all, the strength of a ninja depends not only on talent and hard work but also significantly on lineage and inheritance. A ninja with a father who was a Kage often achieves at least a league jonin strength. After witnessing Byakuya's use of wood release, Anokei began to suspect that Byakuya might carry the bloodline of the Senju clan. As for why Byakuya appeared in Amagekure instead of Konoha, that remains a mystery. Perhaps he was abducted as a child or faced persecution in Konoha. This may explain why Byakuya has consistently concealed his identity, is unwilling to return to Konoha, and even harbors considerable hostility toward it. Anokei began pondering whether this hostility could be leveraged to recruit Byakuya to serve his purposes. After deliberating for a long time, Anokei asked, Byakuya, I can represent Iwagakure. Can you represent Amagekure? If so, we might be able to engage in deeper negotiations. After all, if Iwagakure and your village can establish a cooperative relationship, it could help us both overcome weaknesses while maximizing strengths. I can represent Amagekure to discuss matters with the Tsuchikage, Byakuya replied. He paused momentarily, then looked into the distance and said, We can talk until the battle between Deidara and Konin concludes. Anokei froze for a moment. Wouldn't negotiations between villages normally take days? Why was the time so short? Byakuya glanced at Anokei and explained. I don't want anyone else to know about our conversation. On the surface, it's better if Iwagakure and Amagekure have no apparent connection. It would be troublesome if this information got out. Why? Anokei was puzzled. From his perspective, Byakuya was likely here to discuss territorial divisions in nearby smaller nations. Was there really a need to be so secretive? Byakuya took a deep breath and turned his gaze toward the direction of the Land of Fire. Tsuchikage-sama, I want to briefly discuss matters concerning Konoha and Sunagekure. Don't you think they've become too powerful? I'm planning to take action against them in the future. Chapter 264, Discussing Villages over Wine. Hearing this, Anokei squinted his eyes slightly, becoming even more intrigued by Byakuya. Due to its geographic constraints, despite being one of the 5 great shinobi villages, Iwagakure lags far behind the Land of Fire's Konoha in terms of wealth and commission opportunities. Among the 5 great shinobi villages, the only one they surpass in wealth is Sunagekure, located in the arid desert. However, this does not mean Iwagakure lacks ambition regarding Sunagekure's lands. For Iwagakure, even the smallest bit of additional territory could solve employment issues for its ninjas. Of course, obtaining the Land of Grass or even Konoha's land would be ideal. But due to Konoha's extensive network of alliances, any attack on a neighboring smaller nation would effectively mean directly attacking Konoha. At the moment, Anokei had no desire to be dragged into a war. Pulling his wandering thoughts back, Anokei turned his gaze to Byakuya. He wanted to hear Byakuya's thoughts on Konoha and Sunagekure. He asked, So I recall Konoha and Sunagekure haven't posed a direct threat to Amagekure, have they? Byakuya nodded and replied, Not at present, but the future is uncertain. Besides, if Amagekure wants to ascend to the ranks of the 5 great shinobi villages, we'll have to confront Konoha and Sunagekure sooner or later. You want Amagakure to become one of the 5 great shinobi villages? Anokei repeated the phrase a few times before saying, I didn't expect you to have such ambition, but making a move against the 5 great shinobi villages? 20 years ago, your teacher Hanzo the Salamander tried, and we both know how that ended. Clearing his throat, Anokei continued in the tone of an elder sharing wisdom. The reason the 5 great shinobi villages hold their status isn't just because of 1 or 2 powerful figures that intimidate the shinobi world. It's also because they have a substantial number of elite jonin as their core strength, as well as enough chunin and genin to maintain their size and influence. Without this foundation, even if you temporarily achieve parity with the 5 great shinobi villages, it would be like a meteor streaking across the sky, brilliant but fleeting. I'm well aware of that history. Byakuya paused briefly before continuing. Any small village challenging the 5 great shinobi villages meets a grim end. After that defeat, my teacher spent over a decade regaining his ambition and trusting his dream of joining the 5 great shinobi villages to us, the younger generation. That's why I'm here today, to discuss cooperation with you, Tsuchikage-sama. If we work together, we can severely weaken Konoha, stripping it of its title as the premier shinobi village and damaging its foundations. What's the plan? Let's hear it. Seeing Byakuya's confident demeanor, Anokei grew intrigued. If Byakuya's plan was sound, he might even consider lending some support. While Anokei did not harbor ambitions of making Iwagakure the #1 village, weakening Konoha would certainly be beneficial to Iwagakure. Realizing Anokei's interest, Byakuya didn't keep him in suspense. Tsuchikage-sama, you must be aware of the long-standing conflict between the Senju and Uchiha clans in Konoha. When Madara Uchiha defected and later attacked Konoha, it deepened the rift between the 2 clans. Anokei nodded. He had heard of the tension between the Senju and Uchiha clans. However, he believed that no matter how severe the conflict, it wouldn't cause a major crisis for Konoha. Internal disputes could always be resolved through high-level meetings. For example, despite ideological clashes with his village's Jinchuriki, Anokei shared the will of stone with them, ensuring unity within the village. Byakuya, seeing through Anokei's thoughts, chuckled lightly. Tsuchikage-sama, Konoha's situation is far more complex than you imagine. From what I've learned, the tension between the Uchiha and Senju factions has become irreconcilable. They're on the brink of a coup. After pondering Byakuya's words, Anokei said, So, you're suggesting I ignite the conflict between the Senju and Uchiha? That's something I can't do. Any overt action by me against Konoha would only unify them against a common enemy. Without hesitation, Byakuya responded, As for igniting the Uchiha conflict, I've already made preparations. The Uchiha can never truly unite with Konoha's leadership. All I need you to do, Tsuchikage-sama, is to apply enough pressure along the border when the time comes. You could even launch an offensive against the Land of Fire. Amagakure has no interest in the Fire Country's territory. No interest in the Land of Fire's territory? Anokei frowned. Then what do you want? Merely to see Konoha descend into chaos? Of course not, Byakuya shook his head gently. What I want is the Uchiha clan's bloodline limit. With the Sharingan, Amagakure can grow stronger. Anokei was momentarily stunned. He looked at Byakuya, a tinge of emotion flickering in his heart. The Uchiha clan had once been incredibly glorious. In their prime, their leader, Madara Uchiha, could terrify most elite jonin with just a glance. Yet, decades later, they had fallen to such a lowly state. Not only had the Uchiha become a tool in Byakuya's scheme to ignite internal strife within Konoha, but even their Sharingan was now targeted, reducing them to mere pawns in the game. After a moment of reflection, Anokei began to carefully evaluate how much Iwagakure could benefit from this arrangement. First, weakening Konoha was undoubtedly advantageous for Iwagakure. By simply deploying a strong force along the border, he could tie down Konoha's troops, making their internal conflict unfold more smoothly. Second, Anokei could gain Byakuya as a covert ally. While Iwagakure and Amagakure might not form an official alliance, collaborating on this plan would place Amagakure in Anokei's debt. He could potentially use this leverage to ensure Amegakure aligned with Iwagakure in future endeavors. Furthermore, Amagakure's rise could serve as a counterbalance to Konoha and Kumogakure, creating new shifts in the shinobi world's power dynamics. As for claiming the Land of Fire's territory, Anokei had little interest. It wasn't that he didn't want the land, rather, Iwagakure's current strength wasn't suited to triggering another large-scale shinobi war. If something were to happen to him during such a war, Iwagakure would find itself leaderless and in chaos. Until he had groomed a suitable successor, Anokei had no intention of initiating another great war. Pulling his wandering thoughts back, Anokei suddenly remembered something and asked Byakuya, "Byakuya, why are you seeking cooperation with Iwagakure instead of other shinobi villages?" After a brief moment of contemplation, Byakuya replied, "During the last war, I had a falling out with the 4th Raikage. I also despise Kumogakure's bandit-like ways, so I ruled them out as potential partners. As for Sunagakure and Kirigakure, one is pitifully weak, and the other is embroiled in the blood mist turmoil. Neither of them is worthy of collaborating with Amegakure." Chapter 265, The Shadow of Anokei. Cloud is a bandit, Sand is weak, and Mist is embroiled in the blood mist crisis. Among all the ninja villages in the world, only Anokei-sensei's Iwagakure can be our cooperation partner. Without realizing it, Byakuya had already started addressing Anokei as Anokei-sensei instead of Tsuchikage-sama. Anokei noticed the change in address but didn't comment on it. Instead, he accepted Byakuya's respectful tone with a smile. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel a little envious of how well Hanzo of the Salamander had trained such an exceptional successor. If only my own disciple, Deidara, could be this promising. If he could even be a tenth as capable, he wouldn't be constantly causing me trouble in the village, Anokei mused. After a few seconds of contemplation, Anokei replied, "Byakuya, I'll carefully consider your plan, but first, shouldn't we stop my disciple from fighting your village?" Byakuya nodded and took out a summoning contract, handing it to Anokei. Anokei glanced at it and immediately recognized that it was a summoning contract, likely intended to establish a communication channel between Iwagakure and Amegakure using summoning beasts. Anokei accepted the contract, but he didn't plan on signing it himself. Instead, he intended to have his subordinates test it out, uncertain if there were any traps hidden within. After the discussion concluded, the two flew into the air, heading toward the location where Konan and Deidara were battling. Anokei couldn't help but feel a hint of surprise when he saw Byakuya flying. He hadn't expected this young man to not only master wood release but also possess the ability to fly. Few shinobi in the world could fly, and most of them relied on powerful bird-summoning creatures to achieve flight. A ninja who could fly under their own power was an extraordinary rarity. This meant that, even if Byakuya wasn't strong enough to defeat his opponents in battle, he could always retreat through flight. Byakuya, enjoying the attention, accelerated his speed. For him, the shock of 100 ordinary ninjas paled in comparison to the astonishment of a Kage-level ninja, and Anokei was no ordinary Kage, he was one of the 5 Kage. Before long, Byakuya and Anokei arrived at the battlefield between Konan and Deidara. By this point, the battle was nearly over. Conan's nearly endless supply of explosive tags had worn Deidara down to the point where he had exhausted most of his chakra, unable even to maintain flight. Deidara, always passionate about his explosive arts, had ironically been defeated in an explosive battle by a female ninja. This was a serious blow to his confidence, and he gazed at Konan in midair, feeling despondent and defeated. Konan didn't deliver a fatal blow to Deidara, she only restricted his movements. Part of the reason was that Byakuya hadn't appeared yet, and she wasn't sure how Byakuya intended to handle Deidara. Another reason was that Deidara held a sensitive position as the disciple of the 3rd Tsuchikage. A ninja like him, during peacetime, couldn't be killed unless she wanted to instigate a war. At that moment, Konan sensed Byakuya and Anokei's arrival. When she saw Anokei flying in the sky, she was momentarily stunned. What had Byakuya been doing while she was fighting Deidara? Why was he now appearing side by side with the 3rd Tsuchikage? Did Byakuya possess some special aura that made the old man more inclined to like him? Deidara, upon seeing Anokei, also appeared momentarily confused. After rubbing his eyes, he confirmed that the short old man before him was indeed his teacher. Anokei-sensei. Master, you're finally here. This was the first time Deidara had shown such a submissive attitude toward Anokei, almost like a rebellious child returning home after being bullied. However, instead of feeling pleased by Deidara's rare display of humility, Anokei frowned. After landing beside Deidara, Anokei let out a cold snort and said, "Deidara, if your skills aren't up to par, don't show off. I'm not sure if I've told you, but there are more powerful ninjas in the world than you think." Deidara nodded, feeling somewhat wronged, and said, "I understand, Anokei-sensei." In the past, Deidara would have just agreed verbally to Anokei's scolding without taking it to heart, but after encountering Conan during this mission, he finally realized how harsh the world could be. There were indeed ninjas who could surpass him in the art of explosions, and crush him utterly in the process. At that moment, Deidara noticed Byakuya not far away and curiously asked, "Anokei-sensei, why are you with him? Aren't they the enemies who invaded the village? Didn't you just capture him?" Anokei's expression stiffened. If he had managed to capture Byakuya, then Byakuya would indeed be the intruder. But since both sides were evenly matched, they could only be considered cooperative partners. Wanting to maintain his image in front of his disciple, Anokei had no choice but to explain, "Byakuya, along with Conan, are my guests. When I heard that you escaped from the confinement room, I specifically asked them to give you a lesson, so you could understand the saying, there's always someone stronger, and the sky is higher than the ground." And, shit, here we go again. Deidara's eyes were wide with shock as he pointed at Anokei. "Anokei, old man, how could you do this? I almost sacrificed myself for my art just now." Anokei stroked his beard, pretending to be wise, and said, "If I didn't do this, how could I teach you? Don't blame me, it's for your own good. Let's see if you'll still pursue your art after this lesson." Deidara pondered for a moment, then seriously said, "My pursuit of explosion art will never stop. Today's battle with Conan-sensei made me understand what true explosive art is. I'll continue down this path." Upon hearing this, Anokei's smile immediately froze, and he gave Deidara a sharp smack on the head. "Deidara, go back and reflect on your mistakes. Still pursuing art? Look at Byakuya and Conan, both of them are only a few years older than you, yet they've already become some of the strongest ninjas in the world." Deidara grumbled, "It's not my fault I didn't have enough clay. If I had, Conan definitely wouldn't have been my opponent. And that Byakuya guy too, if I had been fully prepared, he wouldn't have been my match either." Upon hearing Byakuya's name, Anokei's expression turned serious. "Deidara, even if you were fully prepared, you still wouldn't be a match for Byakuya. That guy's strength is unfathomable." This was the first time Deidara had seen Anokei show such an expression, and he asked in confusion, "Anokei, old man, is Byakuya really that strong?" Anokei nodded and replied, "Extremely strong. Right now, his strength is on par with mine, and within the next few decades, he will undoubtedly grow into a ninja who will make the entire ninja world tremble." After saying that, Anokei sighed lightly. When he was young, he had encountered legends like the first Hokage and Madara Uchiha, ninjas who could shake the entire ninja world. Their mere existence was enough to suppress the ambitions of the 4 great shinobi villages. He had thought that such powerful figures would never appear again. But now, after reaching his later years, the ninja world had once again produced a monster like this. Although he might not reach the height of the first Hokage, his mere presence was enough to make Anokei feel a sense of fear. Deidara didn't understand what Anokei was contemplating, but he remembered the look on his teacher's face and deeply engraved Byakuya's name in his mind. Chapter 266, Kitsuchi's Mission. Not long after Byakuya and Conan left, Kitsuchi led the Iwagakure Anbu to the outskirts of the training ground. Even from several kilometers away, he could hear explosions booming intermittently and saw the blinding light of a dust release beam. His heart began to worry about the old man's health. Although the old man was one of the most powerful shinobi in the ninja world, his age was catching up to him. His stamina and reaction time were no longer what they used to be. If he were to face an entire foreign ANBU squad's attack, there would still be a risk of him falling in battle. On his way there, Kitsuchi saw the devastated land marked with deep craters caused by dust release. His ominous premonition grew stronger. He feared something had happened to his father. Upon reaching the massive training ground and seeing his father, Anokei, standing with Deidara, Kitsuchi finally sighed in relief. It must have been the old man reprimanding Deidara for running off, but using a lethal technique like dust release to discipline a child seemed a bit much. That could easily get someone killed. Though he muttered this to himself, Kitsuchi dared not voice his thoughts aloud to his father. Having grown up under a strong-willed father, Kitsuchi was used to Anokei making all the decisions. All he needed to do was follow his father's plans. Anokei noticed Kitsuchi and the others nearby. He turned to Deidara and said, "When we return, I won't put you under house arrest. However, until you've gained the ability to protect yourself, I won't allow you to leave the village again." Deidara nodded, then hopped onto a clay bird and flew back to Iwagakure. Once Deidara left, Kitsuchi approached Anokei and asked, "Third Tsuchikage, were you sparring with Deidara just now?" Half the village could hear the commotion here. Anokei shook his head, his gaze sharp as he replied, "I wasn't sparring with Deidara. I encountered a powerful shinobi outside the village. We fought, but unfortunately, the match ended inconclusively." A shinobi on equal footing with the third Tsuchikage? Kitsuchi's expression was one of shock. As an elite jonin, he knew very well how strong his father was. While there were many shinobi in the ninja world with so-called Kage-level strength, none were his father's match. Yet today, outside Iwagakure, there appeared an opponent evenly matched with his father. The ninja world is filled with powerful shinobi. "We can never let our guard down," Anokei said sternly. After a pause, he continued, "I have 2 tasks for you. Send people to carry them out tomorrow morning." "I await your orders, third Tsuchikage," Kitsuchi replied formally. When it came to work, Kitsuchi preferred to address his father by his title, always maintaining a respectful distance. Anokei glanced at his honest, straightforward son and sighed softly. "First, investigate the Land of Rain, particularly Amigakure and the Akatsuki organization's strength. Second, look into Konoha's Uchiha clan. I want to know how deep their conflict with Konoha's leadership runs." Kitsuchi nodded obediently, then respectfully followed Anokei and the others back to Iwagakure. Meanwhile, on the other side, Konan approached Byakuya. Having just seen Byakuya and Anokei standing side by side, she was puzzled. "Byakuya, what happened back there? Why were you with the third Tsuchikage?" Byakuya replied casually, "I just fought with the Tsuchikage. Neither of us could do anything to the other, so we decided to call it a draw. Anokei doesn't want to offend strong individuals like us." Konan was silent for a moment, unsure of how to respond. Byakuya had recently fought the fourth Raikage to a standstill, and now he had gone toe-to-toe with the third Tsuchikage. It seemed Byakuya had truly become one of the ninja world's peak powerhouses. If he weren't, he wouldn't have dared to provoke Iwagakure. As for Byakuya claiming she also possessed Kage-level strength, Konan didn't believe it. She still had a long way to go before reaching that level. At that moment, Byakuya's face turned slightly mysterious as he said, "Of course, apart from fighting Anokei, I also discussed cooperation between our 2 villages with him." Konan paused in surprise and asked, "Did the third Tsuchikage agree to cooperate?" Byakuya shook his head lightly. Anokei didn't agree, but he didn't refuse either. "If we don't offer enough benefits, it'll be hard to convince this old veteran of the ninja world." Konan agreed with this assessment. Cooperation between shinobi was only possible when the 2 sides were equally matched in power. Even then, it was difficult to satisfy both sides, let alone form any kind of alliance. Suddenly, Konan thought of something and asked Byakuya, "Where are we headed next? You're not planning to take another detour, are you?" Byakuya looked slightly embarrassed. Unable to refute her, he simply reassured her, "This time, we won't take a detour. Once we've arranged things with Kabuto and Nono, we'll head straight back to the village." After leaving the Iwagakure training grounds, Byakuya and Konan found Kabuto and Nono in a hidden cave. At that moment, Kabuto and Nono were discussing the commotion outside. They were debating whether to go out and help Byakuya and Konan. Staying put was torture, but if they went outside, they might end up being a burden due to their lack of strength. Hearing the conversation between Kabuto and Nono, a faint smile appeared on Byakuya's lips. Over the years, his efforts to cultivate Kabuto Yakushi had not been in vain. By now, his importance in Kabuto's heart might have even surpassed that of Orochimaru in the original timeline. However, unlike that venomous snake Orochimaru, Byakuya had no plans of dying so easily, nor did he intend to fragment his soul. The method of splitting one's soul and dispersing it across the ninja world did enhance survival capabilities, but it also drastically reduced personal strength. The reason was simple: chakra is the product of the fusion between physical energy and spiritual power. Without a complete soul, no matter how strong the body is, it will still have defects. This is also why, despite mastering numerous cloning techniques, Orochimaru still relied on unorthodox powers when dealing with enemies. With these thoughts in mind, Byakuya walked into the cave, deliberately making his entrance obvious. Kabuto and Nono turned around sharply, their senses on high alert. Seeing that it was Byakuya, they both breathed a sigh of relief. Kabuto immediately spoke, "Lord Byakuya, Lady Konan, it's a relief that you're unharmed." Byakuya let out a faint snort and replied, "Iwagakure is no match for me and Konan." After a friendly exchange with the third Tsuchikage, he voluntarily let us go. Kabuto and Nono were unsurprised by Byakuya's display of power. In their eyes, Byakuya was expected to possess such strength. After a brief moment of contemplation, Byakuya turned to Kabuto and Nono, his voice calm as he asked, back to the question from earlier. "Nono, do you intend to return to Konoha, wander the ninja world, or join the Akatsuki?" Nono, having long made up her mind, responded without hesitation, "Lord Byakuya, I am willing to join Amigakure and become a member of the Akatsuki." Chapter 267, The Suspicious Danzo. Upper Jonin Nono has joined the Akatsuki. You have received the Walking Priestess Intelligence Specialization. Walking Priestess Intelligence Specialization. After serving as a spy across the ninja world for over a decade, Nono developed a method for quickly training spies, refined during her time running an orphanage. Hearing the system notification in his mind, Byakuya casually clicked to claim the reward. He didn't particularly care about the reward itself. The real benefit was ensuring Kabuto, this talented genius, remained tied to the Akatsuki alongside Nono. After shaking hands with their newest recruit, Nono, Byakuya turned to Kabuto and asked, "Now that Director Nono has joined the Akatsuki, what are your plans, Kabuto?" Kabuto was briefly stunned before a look of gratitude appeared on his face. Unlike Danzo, who issued orders without hesitation and ruled the root organization with an iron fist, Byakuya was considerate enough to ask for his opinion before assigning a mission. Danzo, by contrast, disregarded even the Hokage's commands, punishing any ninja who defied him harshly. After a moment of thought, Kabuto said respectfully, "Lord Byakuya, I intend to continue my mission in Konoha, gathering intelligence on its major factions for you." Byakuya gave Kabuto a thoughtful look and asked, "When you return, how do you plan to explain this to Danzo?" The mission he gave you and Nono was to eliminate each other, after all. Kabuto understood that Byakuya was testing his ability to improvise, so he replied, "I will report that the mission to eliminate the traitor failed due to uncontrollable circumstances, but I'll provide him with more critical intelligence to make up for it." Hearing this, Byakuya nodded in approval. Kabuto, after all, was the same three-faced spy who, in the original timeline, managed to outmaneuver both Danzo and Sasori of the Red Sand. Later, he even played a key role in orchestrating the Fourth Great Ninja War alongside Obito, fighting against the 5 great ninja villages. After silently appraising Kabuto for a few seconds, Byakuya retrieved 2 scrolls from his belongings and handed them over. "Kabuto, I recently obtained 2 secret techniques that are perfectly suited for you to master." Kabuto accepted the scrolls with a look of excitement and gratitude, bowing deeply. "Lord Byakuya, I will faithfully carry out your orders and not disappoint you." Byakuya waved him off. "The intelligence itself isn't as important as your survival. Your life is far more valuable than any intelligence on Konoha. When you return, take good care of yourself." The secret techniques Byakuya gave to Kabuto were none other than body revival jutsu and dark medical ninjutsu, obtained from Shinno. For someone like Byakuya, whose bloodline was already approaching the level of Ashura, these techniques were of limited value. They wouldn't help him surpass the 5 Kage and reach Super Kage strength. However, for Kabuto, who was still only at Chunin level, it was a completely different story. With Kabuto's innate talent, he would soon master these secret techniques. With a bit of additional support to boost his strength, it wouldn't be difficult for Kabuto to rival Kakashi and become one of the elite Jonin in the ninja world. Only then would Kabuto become a truly valuable chess piece, ready to be deployed on the grand board of the ninja world. Over the next 2 weeks, Kabuto focused on learning body revival and dark medical ninjutsu. Byakuya also brought him several medical documents from Orochimaru's laboratory, aiding Kabuto's rapid progress in medical ninjutsu. Eventually, Kabuto received a response to his report to Danzo and was summoned to return to Konoha. Root Base. In the dimly lit room of the Root headquarters, Danzo sat in a chair, his expression as inscrutable as ever, as he reviewed the report Kabuto had submitted upon his return from Iwagakure. His fingers tapped rhythmically on the desk as he squinted slightly at Kabuto and asked, "Kabuto, you're saying the mission to eliminate the Root Trader failed because Iwagakure was attacked, and the target never appeared at the designated location?" Kabuto nodded solemnly and replied, "Yes, Lord Danzo. I failed in my duties. Please punish me as you see fit." Danzo studied Kabuto carefully, as though trying to discern whether he was lying. The mission he had assigned Kabuto and Nono was intended to sever their emotions completely, turning them into perfect tools for him. Unlike other departments in Konoha, the Root organization didn't require its members to retain their humanity. Absolute obedience was all that mattered. Most Root ninjas only became qualified after completing missions to kill close friends or loved ones, burying their emotions to serve as Danzo's tools. If Kabuto succeeded in killing Nono, it would prove he was ready to become one of Danzo's perfect tools. If Kabuto hesitated, then Danzo's backup plan, a reprogrammed Nono, would eliminate Kabuto as a defective product. Both outcomes had been accounted for. However, the situation had deviated from Danzo's expectations. During Kabuto's mission to eliminate Nono, Iwagakure had been attacked by unidentified forces, dragging Nono into the chaos as collateral damage. When Danzo first heard this report, he suspected Kabuto of deceiving him. Yet other Root operatives stationed in Iwagakure confirmed that the village had indeed been attacked the previous night. The scale of the assault was so large that even elite Jonin Katsuchi and the 3rd Tsuchikage Anokei had been mobilized. Kabuto might have conspired to deceive him, but there was no way he could involve the 3rd Tsuchikage in his deception. After a long silence, Danzo asked, "From which direction did the attackers come? Did Iwagakure reach any conclusions?" Kabuto furrowed his brow as though recalling details and replied, "It seemed to be from the southeast. As for whether it was Kumogakure or another village, I don't know, that information was classified." "Southeast?" Danzo muttered, his brows furrowing. Before the Ninetales incident, hearing southeast of Iwagakure would have led him to suspect Kumogakure or Sunagakure, as both villages had the motive and strength to attack Iwagakure. However, since the rise of Amagakure, his first suspicion was now the Rain Village. Apart from its famed demigod Hanzo, the one who stood out most in his mind was Byakuya. Although Byakuya had secretly cooperated with him on multiple occasions, Danzo would never trust him completely. If not for Byakuya, Danzo would have successfully formed an alliance with Hanzo long ago. Perhaps after the Ninetales incident, Danzo could have used Hanzo's influence to secure his position as the 5th Hokage. But if the attack on Iwagakure really was Byakuya's doing, what is Byakuya up to? Danzo wondered. While Amagakure's current strength was impressive, it was still not enough to challenge Iwagakure directly. Initiating a conflict recklessly would only benefit the other ninja villages. Unless Byakuya was emulating one of his own old strategies, disguising himself as a ninja from another village to provoke hostilities and ignite a new ninja war? Chapter 268, Two Spies. Kabuto observed Danzo's reaction closely, quietly musing to himself. Danzo was one of Konoha's high-ranking officials, the head of Root, and could dispatch entire squads of ninjas with a mere wave of his hand, orchestrating unexplained accidents for any troublesome jonin. Yet, the moment Byakuya's name was mentioned, Danzo's composure cracked. His face clearly revealed tension and unease, which left Kabuto curious. What exactly had Lord Byakuya done to make Danzo so visibly anxious at the mere mention of his name? Realizing his reaction had been excessive, Danzo reined in his emotions. No matter how wary he was of Byakuya, he couldn't afford to reveal his apprehension in front of his subordinates. Moreover, the truth behind the attack on Iwagakure was still uncertain. The shinobi of Kumogakure are cunning and treacherous. They have a history of abductions and framing others. For all Danzo knew, they might have launched a covert mission against Iwagakure, targeting one of their bloodline limits. Take Kumogakure's elite jonin Toroi, for example. He was kidnapped as a child and groomed to become a wielder of the magnet release. Although Troy ultimately fell to the 4th Kazekage, his case stood as proof of Kumogakure's ambitions. Pushing those thoughts aside, Danzo refocused on Kabuto, pondering the boy's future. Kabuto was a rare talent Danzo had personally picked out from the orphanage, young, highly skilled, and with a remarkably high mission success rate. If nurtured properly, he could one day become a jonin elite. Konoha had no more than a few dozen jonin elite ninjas, and Root, under Danzo's leadership, had even fewer, only 2 or 3. Losing another promising ninja would be wasteful. However, Kabuto had failed his test of loyalty. He hadn't killed his loved one, which meant he might someday betray Danzo. Normally, such risks were eliminated swiftly. But the loss of Tenzo, Yamato, whom Hiruzen had taken from him months ago, left Danzo with fewer resources. Kabuto was too valuable to discard. After a long pause, Danzo finally spoke. Kabuto, given that you brought back vital information, I will overlook your failure this time. But failure cannot go entirely unpunished. After writing your mission report, you are to report to the Ninja Academy. Kabuto was stunned. The Ninja Academy? Lord Danzo, am I not too old to be placed there? Danzo stared him down and clarified, not as a teacher. You will attend as a graduating student. Once you graduate, I'll assign you a new mission. In the meantime, I want you to observe and report on any promising young talents at the academy. Kabuto accepted the task without further objection. He knew Danzo had lost trust in him and was using this as a pretext to distance him from Root. Still, this wasn't entirely bad. A temporary break from Root meant more time to focus on his own studies, whether in medical ninjutsu or combat techniques. With enough power, he could truly become Lord Byakuya's right hand. As he left the dark, oppressive confines of Root and stepped into the sunlit streets of Konoha, Kabuto crossed paths with another young Root ninja. Their gazes met briefly before they passed each other without a word, heading in opposite directions. Even though the other ninja wore a mask, Kabuto quickly deduced his identity. This could only be Root's lone Uchiha member, Itachi Uchiha. Root had no shortage of young recruits, but none exuded the same aura of power and skill as the Uchiha prodigy. Looking back at Itachi, who was now disappearing into the Root entrance, Kabuto couldn't help but feel that the Uchiha was far more suited for life in Root, and for the role of a spy. But then again, what did that have to do with him? With a faint sigh, Kabuto picked up his pace and vanished into the forest. Meanwhile, Itachi felt something. He abruptly turned, scanning the area. The leaves rustled softly, but there was no sign of anyone spying on him. Reassured, Itachi continued deeper into the Root headquarters, his heart weighed with unease. To join Root and earn his place in the Umbu, Danzo had assigned him a dangerous mission, hunting down and eliminating a rogue ninja. This target was from a ninja clan and possessed Jonin elite-level taijutsu skills. If not for Shisui's timely assistance, Itachi might have been killed during the mission. Still, Itachi believed it was worth it. While Shisui served as a bridge between the Uchiha clan and Konoha, Itachi knew one bridge wasn't enough. To resolve the tension between the Uchiha clan and the village, they needed more intermediaries, and Itachi was determined to become one. Only by proving himself to Danzo, showing him the loyalty and value of the Uchiha, could he help mend the rift. And beyond Konoha, Itachi dreamed of bridging the gaps between villages, ushering in peace for the entire shinobi world. The dream might seem far-fetched, but Itachi believed someone had to try. He saw further than most jonin, so he had to shoulder greater responsibilities. Crossing the dimly lit hallways of Root, Itachi finally stood before Danzo's office. The flickering candlelight reflected in Danzo's cold, calculating gaze. Steeling himself, Itachi knocked. "Come in," came Danzo's measured voice. "So you've finally returned, Itachi. How did the mission go?" Itachi entered the room, knelt on one knee, and reported, "Lord Danzo, the mission was a success. The rogue ninja has been eliminated." Danzo narrowed his eyes. "Oh? Is that so? Tell me everything." Chapter 269, Danzo's Successor. During the mission debriefing, Itachi provided a meticulous and detailed account of the task, though Danzo listened with little interest. To Danzo, a rogue jonin, regardless of their elite status, was insignificant. Against the vast military power of Konoha, no lone trader could cause any real upheaval. Instead, Danzo's attention remained firmly on Itachi. In his heart, he was determined to mold Itachi into a fine subordinate, a weapon to wield against the Uchiha clan. Itachi is the son of Fugaku Uchiha, the clan head, and an unparalleled prodigy. In less than half a year, Itachi has graduated from the Ninja Academy, breaking Kakashi's record. His exceptional performance during missions had even earned the envy of his jonin leader. At the time, that jonin refused to nominate Itachi for the Chunin exams, citing the team's lack of overall strength. Danzo himself intervened to secure Itachi's spot, and Itachi did not disappoint. He dominated the Chunin exams with overwhelming skill, securing first place without question. From that moment onward, Itachi had been under Danzo's watchful influence. It was through the recent mission evaluation that Itachi officially became a member of Root, Danzo's shadowy organization. After the report ended, Danzo looked at Itachi and said, "You did well on this mission." Eliminating a potential threat before he could defect to an enemy nation prevented valuable intelligence from being leaked. Danzo then paused deliberately before asking with a pointed tone, "Tell me, Itachi. How did it feel to kill a rogue ninja with your own hands?" Itachi was silent for a moment before answering, "Lord Danzo, I'm not sure what to feel. That man was a comrade of our village. Why would he choose to betray Konoha? What happened to him? During our time together, I saw someone who was kind and warm, a jonin who cared for his comrades and family alike. I believe there must have been some reason, something unavoidable, that led him to betray the village." Danzo's expression darkened slightly. He spoke in a grave tone. "Every rogue ninja has their reasons. But uncovering those reasons is the Hokage's job. Root exists to protect Konoha in the shadows. We do not need to understand traitors or redeem them. We need only to eliminate threats to the village. That is the mission of Root, and it is what you must learn and practice from now on." Itachi fell silent once more, contemplating Danzo's words. To some degree, they made sense to him. A ninja had no obligation to understand why someone turned traitor. From the moment they chose to betray the village, their past, no matter how tragic, ceased to matter. Seeing Itachi lost in thought, Danzo allowed a subtle, satisfied smile to appear on his lips. Those words were not empty, they were forged from decades of Danzo's experience as a shinobi. Speaking from his heart was the best way to win the trust of a prodigy like Itachi. From the first time Danzo had seen Itachi, he had already envisioned his potential. He intended to cultivate this exceptional, independent-minded Uchiha, a child who thought like a seasoned shinobi at the age of 6, as his successor. Itachi would inherit his will of roots and his vision for the greater good. After a long silence, Itachi bowed slightly and said, Thank you for your guidance, Lord Danzo. Is there another mission for me to undertake? Danzo studied Itachi for a moment before replying, for now, there's no mission. However, I hope you take the time to study the Will of Fire. Do not follow the same misguided path as the rest of your clan. Tomorrow, report to Root early. Ryoma, one of my senior jonin, will assign you your next task. Yes, Lord Danzo, Itachi said, bowing once again. He then turned and disappeared into the dark passageway. Once Itachi was gone, Danzo's face twisted into an inscrutable expression. He could tell that Itachi had not yet fully accepted his ideology. Oh well, as long as Itachi remained within Root, Danzo knew it was only a matter of time before he shaped the boy's beliefs. Sooner or later, he would mold Itachi into the blade he needed to eradicate the Uchiha. The Uchiha were, after all, an inherently evil clan. Their mere existence was a destabilizing factor in the village. Since the days of the first Hokage, Uchiha Madara had brought chaos. During the second Hokage's reign, it was Uchiha Setsuna. Then, during the fourth Hokage's time, the masked man responsible for the Ninetales attack had wreaked havoc. And now, after the Ninetales incident, Shisui had awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan, becoming yet another threat to the village. Danzo's eyes glinted coldly in the shadows. The Uchiha clan's fate had already been decided. Itachi would simply be the tool to carry out that decision. Although Shisui is currently close to Hiruzen, who's to say Shisui won't suddenly change his nature one day, take control of the young Jinchuriki, and start another shinobi world war within the village? Rather than living in constant fear, it's better to deal with the Uchiha threat in advance. If I take action and successfully eliminate Uchiha Shisui, obtaining his Mangekyo Sharingan, I would gain the power necessary to claim the title of Hokage. However, this is just a thought. Without absolute certainty, I can't make a move against Shisui. The crime of harming a fellow villager is severe, even if it involves an Uchiha. That old monkey Sarutobi Hiruzen would seize the opportunity to push me further from the center of power. The priority for now is to slowly groom Itachi, guiding him to turn against the Uchiha clan from within. As Itachi left the Root base, dusk had already fallen. Being recognized and officially joining the Root was a good thing for him. Starting today, he could finally move deeper into this organization, getting closer to the ninja most hostile toward the Uchiha, and understand their perspective on the clan. This would help immensely in resolving the conflict between the clan and the village. However, as he left the Root base, Itachi gradually came to his senses. Danzo's words earlier, which had seemed so reasonable, were actually trying to influence his understanding of what it means to be a shinobi, subtly twisting his values. What shocked him more was that, deep down, he found himself somewhat agreeing with Danzo's ideology. The idea of dwelling in darkness to protect the light had been ingrained in him long before he even attended the ninja academy. Unconsciously, Itachi had already returned to the Uchiha clan grounds. At that moment, a female Uchiha ninja wearing the village uniform approached him. She smiled brightly and said, "Itachi, there you are. The clan meeting is about to start. Do you want to head over now? Oh, and one more thing. I've also passed my graduation exam and officially become a ninja. We might get the chance to go on missions together someday." Looking at the lively girl in front of him, Itachi gave a slight nod. "Let's go together, Izumi." Chapter 270, A New Choice for the Uchiha. The Uchiha clan meeting had lasted less than an hour, but to Itachi, it felt as though he had endured a full year. Surrounded by clansmen who only knew how to demand but not contribute, a feeling of disgust quietly stirred in his heart. He couldn't understand why his clan could be so foolish, so short-sighted, and incapable of considering the greater good. Even setting aside the slim odds of success for a coup, even if they did manage to seize power from the Hokage's office, the Uchiha and the village would both be gravely weakened. In such a state, how could they defend against the inevitable attacks from external enemies? The shinobi of his clan, Itachi thought bitterly, were just a group of fools who lacked the will of fire. He hadn't joined Root under Danzo to spy on the Hokage faction. His true goal was to maintain peace between the Uchiha and the village. Izumi Uchiha noticed the shift in Itachi's expression. Izumi, who had only just earned the right to attend clan meetings as a newly recognized ninja, was an old acquaintance of Itachi's. In truth, she had always held feelings for him, though for various reasons, she had never expressed them. Seeing Itachi's demeanor change during the meeting, Izumi's eyes filled with concern and confusion. The words spoken during the meeting were undoubtedly intense and a little radical, but nothing had truly crossed a line. After all, every shinobi aspired to be Hokage. Why shouldn't the Uchiha be allowed to dream the same? If clan members needed a place to vent their frustrations, wasn't it better for them to do so here, in a clan meeting, rather than out in the open where it might stir trouble? When the meeting ended, Itachi and Izumi walked out of the Naka shrine together. Just as Izumi opened her mouth to say something, Itachi activated the body flicker technique and disappeared. Izumi stood frozen in place, her expression falling into sadness. She had thought that becoming a ninja would allow her to better understand Itachi, but now it seemed it had all been wishful thinking. She had never really understood him at all. Even when she wanted to comfort him, she didn't know how. As Izumi stood there helplessly, Shisui appeared behind her and spoke gently. "Izumi, go home. Lead Itachi to me." At the sight of Shisui, Izumi nodded quickly. If anyone in the clan understood Itachi best, it was undoubtedly Shisui. Not even Fugaku and Mikoto, Itachi's own parents, could compare to Shisui's insight into his mind. After offering Izumi a few words of comfort, Shisui vanished using the body flicker technique, heading toward the forest. It didn't take long for Shisui to find Itachi standing on a cliff near the Naka River. Guided by the moonlight, Shisui quietly approached and stood beside him. "It looks like something's bothering you," Shisui said calmly. "Is it because Fugaku-sama asked you to spy en route, or because of your meeting with Danzo earlier today?" "Both, I suppose." Itachi sighed softly, his eyes reflecting a complex mix of emotions. Shisui listened silently as Itachi recounted his conversation with Danzo earlier in the day, holding nothing back. When Itachi finished, Shisui furrowed his brows and said, "Itachi, you're not starting to fall for Danzo's ideals, are you? His belief in protecting the light from the shadows may sound noble, but didn't you catch the deeper meaning behind his words?" Shisui's tone grew serious. "Danzo was asking you this. If the day comes when the clan and the village come into conflict, which will you choose, your family or the village?" "I know." Itachi nodded slightly before countering with his own question. "But what if that day does come? I don't know if I would choose the village or the clan. If it were you, Shisui, I'm sure you would make the right choice." Shisui fell silent for a moment. If the only options were between the village and the clan, he realized he couldn't make a choice either. He didn't want to see the two sides fall into conflict. But whether choosing the village or the clan was the right decision, Shisui couldn't say. Still, all of that was in the past now. After being questioned by Byakuya and witnessing Byakuya's strength, comparable to that of the five Kage, Shisui knew there was a third option, one that didn't require choosing between the village and the clan. However, this option required far more resolve and courage than simply siding with one faction. After a long pause, Shisui turned to Itachi and asked slowly, "Itachi, let me ask you something, must the Uchiha stay in Konoha?" Itachi froze, his eyes widening in shock as he looked at Shisui. Shisui cleared his throat and continued, "If the clan is so dissatisfied with Konoha's leadership, and the leadership continues to treat the Uchiha as a threat, why must we stay here? If both sides refuse to coexist peacefully, why not leave?" Itachi thought for a moment before responding cautiously, "Shisui, are you suggesting that the clan leave Konoha and look for a new place to live?" "Exactly." Shisui nodded. "The clan doesn't have to stay in a village that rejects us. If Konoha refuses to accept us, we can simply leave." Itachi was visibly stunned by Shisui's proposal. After considering it carefully, he shook his head. "Shisui, it's good that you're thinking of alternatives, but your idea is impossible to execute. Leading the village as a group would be no different, in the eyes of the leadership, from staging a coup. Whether it's defection or rebellion, the outcome would be the same. Konoha would send its forces to hunt us down. And do you think the clan would agree to such a plan? They're obsessed with overthrowing the current regime and installing a Uchiha as Hokage. They wouldn't accept fleeing the village as an option. If you actually tried to carry out this plan, you'd face opposition from both the village and the clan. Itachi paused, then continued in a somber tone. Even if we did manage to leave, where would we go? There's nowhere for the Uchiha to settle. Other villages would never accept us, and we'd just be trading one danger for another. Shisui fell silent, unable to deny that Itachi's reasoning was sound. This was precisely why no one in the Uchiha clan had ever suggested leaving Konoha. The Uchiha were one of the founding clans of the Konohagakure. How could they abandon the very village they helped create, only to become second-rate refugees in another land? For the Uchiha, who held honor above all else, such a fate was worse than death. But the clan Shinobi were only one part of the equation. What about those in the clan who had yet to become ninjas? Shisui wondered. Would they value their honor, or would they value their lives? Could he make that choice on their behalf? A heavy sigh escaped Shisui's lips. Byakuya had been right. He was still far too indecisive, unable to act decisively when faced with matters of such magnitude. Perhaps his destiny was to meet a tragic end after all. Pushing those thoughts aside, Shisui forced a faint smile and turned to Itachi. You're right. I haven't thought it through. But offering the clan another choice, even if it seems impossible, can't be a bad thing. At the very least, it gives us one more chance to avoid conflict. This was the best solution I could think of to keep the clan and the village from destroying each other. Chapter 271, Itachi and Obito. After conversing under the moonlight for a while, Shisui and Itachi both felt considerably better. Although there were ideological conflicts between the two, at their core, both sought to save their clan and prevent a clash between the Uchiha and the village. After encouraging each other, Shisui and Itachi left the cliff and headed in the direction of their respective homes. On his way home, besides contemplating how the clan and the village could coexist, images of Sasuke gradually surfaced in Itachi's mind before a faint smile appeared on his lips. Walking the fine line between the root organization and his clan, he carried an immensely heavy burden every day. Only when he saw his younger brother's smiling face could he truly relax. Sasuke was his dearest little brother, the one he most wanted to protect in this lifetime. Even if it was just to protect his brother, he would stop the clan's reckless coup attempt. As for Shisui's earlier suggestion of having the entire clan flee, Itachi still couldn't decide whether he agreed or disagreed with it. But when exactly did Shisui start considering fleeing? Shisui used to care so deeply about Konohagakure and surely understood what the Uchiha defecting would mean for the village. If the Uchiha really left Konoha, it might shake the resolve of the other ninja clans. In this post-Senju dissolution era, the Uchiha were already the most senior family in the village. If they truly abandoned Konoha, the consequences would be unthinkable. Should he report Shisui's thoughts to the Hokage? Itachi fell into deep thought but immediately dismissed the idea. How could he doubt Shisui? Without Shisui's help, he would have already lost interest in the shinobi world and died in the Naka River. At that moment, accompanied by a surge of chakra, ripples appeared in the void. A distorted vortex appeared out of thin air, and from it emerged a figure clad in black robes and a tiger-patterned mask, eyeing Itachi like a predator examining its prey. The instant he saw the masked man, Itachi drew a kunai and stared warily at him. He recognized this mysterious masked man and knew that, like himself, the man possessed Sharingan eyes, 3 Tomo Sharingan, to be precise. It was this man who, during Itachi's mission to protect a noble, had killed his comrades, triggering his awakening of the single Tomo Sharingan. He could never forget the way the masked man had looked at him that day, identical to the way he was looking at him now. The difference was that compared to a few years ago, his strength had undergone a qualitative change. He was no longer the freshly graduated genin from the Ninja Academy. Channeling chakra to his feet, Itachi shot forward like an arrow toward the masked man. But just as his kunai was about to strike, the masked man's body turned into an incorporeal shadow, as if the kunai had merely cut through air. After evading Itachi's attack, Toby reappeared on the other side and said indifferently, "Compared to 2 years ago, your strength has improved quite a bit. But if you want to kill me, you're still far from it. Only when you awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan will you be qualified to converse with me on equal terms." From Toby's words, Itachi gleaned a great deal of useful information. The other party, like himself, was also an Uchiha who had awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan and possessed a unique space-time ability. Moreover, the man seemed particularly interested in him. Thinking of this, Itachi feigned calm and said, "So, you hope that I awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan, but I'm curious about one thing. If you're truly an Uchiha, why have I never heard any rumors about you within the clan?" Toby glanced at Itachi and replied indifferently, "You've definitely heard my name, but you've simply forgotten for now. I am one of Konoha's founders, Madara Uchiha, the Shura of the Shinobi world." "Madara Uchiha?" Itachi snorted lightly. "Madara died long ago at the hands of the first Hokage. Could it be that you're merely a ghost now, without a physical body?" "A ghost? That's not entirely wrong." After pausing for a moment, Toby continued, "I am indeed the ghost wandering above Konoha, silently observing everything that happens in Konohagakure. From the first great ninja war to the end of the conflict between Konoha and Kumogakure." Itachi furrowed his brow. He couldn't be certain if this man was truly Madara Uchiha. Madara had supposedly died decades ago, but aside from him, there were very few Uchiha known to have awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. With that thought, Itachi decided to cut to the chase. "Enough nonsense. Why have you sought me out? I'm just a Konoha Jonin. I doubt there's anything about me worth your attention, let alone the possibility of awakening the Mangekyo Sharingan." Toby smiled and said, "Don't underestimate yourself. If you lack the potential to awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan, I wouldn't have been keeping such a close eye on you. A genius like you will never fulfill your true potential while stuck in the mud that is Konoha and the Uchiha. I've come to observe you. One day, when you're disappointed in Konoha and the Uchiha, you'll become someone like me." "Someone like you?" Itachi retorted. Toby nodded and said, "Yes, someone like me. I was once like you, believing in the will of fire, in friendship, burning myself to illuminate the budding youth of Konohagakure. But the higher I rose, the more I could see Konoha's hypocrisy. Only after leaving Konoha did I find the true meaning of life, achieving world peace. The will of fire is merely a torch that lights up the darkness, but it can only illuminate Konoha, a small corner of the world. My goal is to raise a greater torch, one that can illuminate the entire Shinobi world." Hearing that Toby's wish was to bring world peace, Itachi gave him a skeptical look. While he had similar ideals, the man's words sounded overly grandiose and hollow. How could he dismiss the will of fire? Was there really a better ideology out there? After frowning in thought for a while, Itachi spoke, "In the end, you're just trying to lure me away from Konoha and make me your subordinate. I have no interest in becoming your subordinate, so you might as well leave. If someone else were to see you here, they wouldn't be as tolerant as I am. No matter how powerful you are, you're no match for my village." Toby sneered and, as he disappeared into the swirling vortex, said, "I've already launched an attack against Konoha before, so don't be so sure. I won't force you to join me immediately. One day, when you're disappointed in your clan and your village, you'll come begging me for help. But this dear me has the time and the patience to wait for that day to come." Chapter 272, Shisui's Resolve. At dawn the next day, after reporting to Ryuma, a Jonin, Itachi was assigned a surveillance mission. The target of his surveillance? None other than his own clan, the Uchiha. With a heavy heart, Itachi arrived at the ANBU surveillance room. The room was filled with countless screens, displaying nearly every corner of the Uchiha clan's district. Except for a few places like the police force headquarters and Naka Shrine, the rest was completely visible. Seeing this, Itachi felt his heart sink and a wave of unease washed over him. For the first time, he realized the stark gap between his clan and the village leadership. While the Uchiha spent their efforts trying to gather information about the upper echelon, Konoha's leadership had already established an extensive surveillance network over most of their territory. This also meant that every move the Uchiha made, including their ambitions to claim the Hokage position, was under constant scrutiny. Under such an overwhelming disadvantage, did his clan truly stand a chance? After a moment of silence, Itachi turned to Ryuma, the leading Jonin, and asked, "Ryuma-san, why did Lord Danzo assign me to monitor the Uchiha district? And why is the Uchiha clan under surveillance in the first place?" "Because the Uchiha are dangerous elements, of course." Ryuma glanced at Itachi, speaking without the slightest regard for his feelings. The Valley of the End battle decades ago and the Nine-Tails attack a few years back have already proven this. Lord Danzo is worried that your clan will harm the village again. As for why you're assigned this task, it's likely because he trusts you. Heh! Honestly, I'm a little envious of you. You've only just joined Root, yet you've already earned Lord Danzo's favor. Who knows, you might even become his successor one day. Itachi forced a polite smile, concealing his emotions, and began his task. To most shinobi, watching monitors would be a dull task, but Itachi carried it out with utmost diligence. He wanted to see for himself how the upper echelons truly viewed his clan. From morning to dusk, Itachi worked for 12 hours straight before leaving Root headquarters. During this time, Itachi came to a clear understanding of his clan's image in the eyes of Konoha's leadership. The Uchiha shinobi who served in the police force were arrogant and domineering, often abusing their authority to punish village citizens and shinobi harshly for any infractions. However, when their own clan members made mistakes, they were quick to show leniency. This disparity in treatment left a bitter taste in Itachi's heart. When facing the unfairness of Konoha's leadership, the Uchiha were quick to voice their outrage during clan meetings, accusing the Hokage and his advisors of discrimination. Yet, in front of ordinary villagers, the Uchiha police force acted no differently from the upper echelons they despised. Konoha's leadership discriminated against the Uchiha, while the Uchiha discriminated against ordinary shinobi and villagers. Realizing this contradiction, Itachi sighed inwardly. He suddenly felt that all his efforts were futile and that life itself held little value. How many people in Konoha truly upheld the will of fire? The surveillance of the Uchiha district continued for 3 long months. During this time, Itachi also undertook several missions assigned by Danzo, eliminating numerous rogue shinobi who had betrayed the village. After killing a rogue genin with his own hands, Itachi wiped the blood from his kunai, collected the forehead protector and severed head, and delivered them to Danzo. Danzo glanced at the severed head before turning his gaze to Itachi. "Itachi, you've been with Root for 3 months now. What do you think of our organization?" Itachi chose his words carefully before replying. Root is an organization that protects the light from within the shadows. There are things that cannot be brought to light, and only Root has the ability to handle them. Danzo nodded approvingly. "You're right. Root's purpose is to do what the Hokage cannot. Only by removing the parasites feeding on Konoha can this great tree stand strong. Even if innocent lives are lost in the process, it's a necessary sacrifice. We cannot prioritize the needs of a few over the well-being of the majority. Do you remember the trolley dilemma I once told you about? Would you save 5 people, or let fate take its course and allow one to survive?" Without hesitation, Itachi answered, "I would save the 5. I cannot abandon 5 lives for the sake of one." When Danzo had first posed this question, Itachi had chosen to let fate decide. But after completing numerous missions for Root, his perspective had shifted. 5 lives were more important than 1, even if that one person didn't deserve to die. Hearing Itachi's answer, Danzo was satisfied. He knew he had successfully instilled Root's philosophy into Itachi's mind. With this, when the time came for Konoha to act against the Uchiha, Itachi would stand with the village. However, the conflict between Konoha and the Uchiha had not yet reached its breaking point. The Uchiha needed to display their intent to claim the Hokage position before Hiruzen Sarutobi would be compelled to take action against them. For now, Danzo only needed to keep pressuring the Uchiha and push the police force's spies into action. Eventually, the Uchiha would launch a coup d'état. When the Uchiha attacked the Hokage's office, Hiruzen's ANBU would be crippled from suppressing the uprising. At that moment, Danzo could dispatch Root to clean up the mess. By claiming credit for ending the rebellion, Danzo could impeach Hiruzen and rise as Konoha's fifth Hokage. Shisui was not blind to Itachi's changes over the past 3 months. As Itachi's closest friend, Shisui could clearly sense his growing extremism. Itachi's demeanor had grown colder and more ruthless during missions. Witnessing this, Shisui had tried to persuade Itachi to leave Root, but Itachi refused. Itachi believed that staying in Root had its advantages. If the Hokage faction made any moves, he would be the first to know, and he and Shisui could plan countermeasures to save their clan together. Shisui didn't know how to change Itachi's mind or convince him to see things differently. The Uchiha didn't have to stay in Konoha. They could leave and build a new life elsewhere. Why did they insist on remaining in the Hidden Leaf Village? Torn between his increasingly distant best friend and his stubborn clan, Shisui found himself trapped in a dilemma. In the end, he realized that his only choice was to use the gift he had received from Byakuya and seek help from the one person he couldn't fully understand. Chapter 273, I Need Your Loyalty. Byakuya-sama, the Uchiha need your help, Shisui said. Upon receiving Shisui's message, Byakuya opened a drawer full of prepared plans for the night of the Uchiha massacre. He carefully considered which strategy to hand over to Shisui for execution. After some thought, Byakuya destroyed all the plans, dismissing the idea entirely. The Uchiha were never particularly clever, and if they failed to grasp his intentions or botched the execution of his plan, years of his schemes would be wasted. After all, whether the Uchiha survived or perished wasn't particularly important to him. However, if the Uchiha were wiped out, he would lose his opportunity to gain a high-tier Mangekyo reward. Recruiting the entire Uchiha clan under his command would surely earn him substantial benefits. Leaving a wood clone behind, Byakuya summoned White Zetsu, Shiro, and used Mayfly technique to quickly travel toward Konoha. The Mayfly technique was incredibly fast. In less than a day, Byakuya had crossed over 1,000 kilometers to arrive at Kanagakur. He found Shisui in a clearing within the Forest of Death. The Uchiha prodigy was training his body flicker technique, slicing through falling leaves with his kunai while leaving afterimages in his wake. Byakuya didn't reveal himself immediately. Instead, he manipulated his chakra to summon vines from the ground, which surged toward Shisui. Noticing the sudden attack, Shisui's face darkened. He sliced through the vines with his kunai before shouting into the empty forest, "Byakuya-sama, is that you?" Recognized so easily, Byakuya stepped out of the shadows and patted Shisui on the shoulder. Guessing my identity based on would release is a clever move. But remember, I'm not the only one in the ninja world who can use would release. If you encounter someone else, you might not be so lucky. There are other ninja in the world who can use would release. And Byakuya's speed, wasn't it too fast? The Land of Rain was over 1,000 kilometers away from Konoha. Although shocked, Shisui maintained his composure and replied, "Even if others can use would release, none are as strong as you, Byakuya-sama. I would never forget your power." Hearing Shisui's unexpected flattery, Byakuya immediately understood how dire the situation had become between the Uchiha and Konoha's leadership. Otherwise, why would the Uchiha lower their proud heads? With this in mind, Byakuya said, "Shisui, I much prefer you when you're defiant. That's the true Uchiha spirit we admire." Shisui was briefly stunned, struggling to keep up with Byakuya's unusual line of thought. Clearing his throat, Byakuya continued, "Let's skip the small talk. What kind of trouble has the Uchiha encountered that you're coming to me for help?" Shisui sighed deeply and recounted the situation with Itachi, how he had joined Root under Danzo and was now being influenced to stand against the clan. Hearing that Itachi, just like in the original timeline, had joined Root and become Danzo's weapon against the Uchiha, Byakuya couldn't help but chuckle. Truly worthy of someone with the Hokage mindset. although it was hard to say whether Itachi followed the ideals of the first, second, third, or fourth Hokage. After a brief pause, Byakuya said, Itachi Uchiha has fallen under Danzo's influence. In the future, he will undoubtedly stand with Konoha's leadership, and he may even act against his own clan. Shisui frowned deeply. Itachi wouldn't go that far. He may not express his feelings well, but he still loves the clan in his heart. Byakuya smirked meaningfully. You'd be surprised. I've dealt with Danzo before. The ninja he manipulates may appear to have free will, but they are nothing more than his tools. However, Danzo's or Itachi's thoughts are irrelevant. What matters is your opinion, Shisui. Why have you sought my help this time, and are you prepared to pay the price for it? Shisui took a deep breath and spoke resolutely. To save the clan, I'm willing to do anything. Even if it means giving you my Mangekyo Sharingan. Mangekyo Sharingan? That's quite a nice pair of eyes. Byakuya gazed into Shisui's eyes, then shook his head. But I don't need your eyes. What I need is your loyalty. Just my loyalty? That's all? Shisui exhaled in relief. He had assumed Byakuya's interest lay in his Mangekyo Sharingan, but it turned out all Byakuya wanted was his and the clan's loyalty. This undoubtedly proved that Byakuya's ambitions were far grander than Shisui had initially imagined. However, what of it? The greater Byakuya's ambition, the more it confirmed that he possessed the strength to match it. If Shisui brought the Uchiha clan under Byakuya's command, they would surely have more room to grow and thrive. Compared to Konoha, which constantly suppressed the Uchiha, Byakuya's Amigekure would not deliberately stifle their potential. After pondering for a moment, Shisui said, Byakuya-sama, if you are willing to accept the Uchiha, we will pledge our loyalty to you. Byakuya frowned slightly. The Uchiha are under Konoha's watch. Bringing your entire clan out of the village won't be easy. Even if I can lead you away, will your clan members agree to leave? Byakuya's words struck Shisui at the core, leaving him silent. He indeed lacked the confidence to convince his clan. Despite being the strongest within the Uchiha and having awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan, his authority within the clan was limited. Beyond his personal prestige, he did not hold enough sway to lead the entire clan away. Moreover, the Uchiha were a large clan, numbering around 300 members. Of those, only a few dozen were trained shinobi. The rest were ordinary people without any ninja skills. While the Uchiha ninja could leave under the pretense of missions, the non-combatants couldn't. Moving such a large number of people would undoubtedly arouse the suspicion of Konoha's leadership. Realizing this, Shisui suddenly felt that leaving Konoha wasn't a feasible solution. It was riddled with challenges at every turn. Seeing Shisui's hesitation, Byakuya spoke again. From the information you provided, it seems that while the Uchiha and Konoha's leadership are at odds, the leadership isn't yet prepared to move against your clan. Perhaps they are wary of your Mangekyo Sharingan, or maybe they fear that destroying the Uchiha would leave them without enough forces to deter other villages. Either way, you still have enough time to make your move. Pausing for a moment, Byakuya turned to Shisui and said, in the time to come, I will guide you step by step, how to seize power within the Uchiha, how to lead your clan against Konoha, and ultimately, how to achieve your goals. Hearing this, Shisui nodded solemnly and said, Then I will leave it to you, Byakuya-sama. Chapter 274, The Fearsome Kotoema Tsukumi. Days later, under Byakuya's instructions, Shisui arrived alone at the Hokage building. As a member of the Umbu, Shisui's identity ensured that he faced no resistance on his way. He easily reached the entrance to the Hokage's office. Knocking on the door and receiving the third Hokage's permission, Shisui slowly stepped inside. Inside the office, the third Hokage was leisurely playing with his crystal ball, occasionally smiling with satisfaction. Ever since he curtailed Danzo's influence by utilizing Kakashi and Tenzo, no ninja in the village posed a threat to his position as Hokage. Finally, he could relax. Seeing that it was Shisui, the third Hokage put away the crystal ball, frowning slightly. Shisui, why are you here? Is there intelligence about the Uchiha clan that you need to report? Shisui nodded lightly before speaking. Lord Hokage, the dissatisfaction within my clan toward you and the village has been growing. Some radical clan members have even begun discussing a coup and have set a time frame for it. I find the frenzy of these extremists frightening, and I fear that they might. Here, Shisui sighed deeply, as if weighed down by an immense burden. Hearing that the Uchiha were planning a coup, the third Hokage's expression shifted. He had always known that the Uchiha harbored ambitions to claim the Hokage title. But in the past, they relied on elections and peaceful means. Now they were resorting to rebellion. Had it really come to this? He had just dealt a blow to Danzo, and now the Uchiha were preparing to overthrow him? It wasn't that he was clinging to power. It was just that none of you are worthy to be Hokage. Were the Uchiha's strength and achievements truly greater than Jiraiya's or Tsunade's? If the Uchiha led the village, wouldn't the entire Hidden Leaf become as chaotic as the police force? At that point, all his and Tobirama-sensei's efforts over the years would be for naught. Collecting his scattered thoughts, the third Hokage turned to Shisui. Shisui, you've awakened the legendary Mangekyo Sharingan. Even you cannot suppress these radicals? Shisui put on a helpless expression and sighed again. Lord Hokage, I believe it's precisely because I possess the Mangekyo Sharingan that they feel emboldened to plan a coup. The third Hokage paused, feeling a sense of relief that Shisui was on his side. Shisui's demeanor was identical to that of Kagami Uchiha in his youth. If Kagami hadn't died unexpectedly and had become an advisor like Koharu and Hamura, the relationship between the village and the Uchiha might have been far less strained. Feeling nostalgic, the third Hokage spoke sincerely. Thank you for bringing this information to me. I will arrange to meet with clan leader Fugaku soon to ease tensions. In the meantime, I ask that you continue calming your clansmen, persuading them to abandon this coup. If it truly becomes unavoidable, I just hope that day comes as late as possible. Shisui's brows fell, as if wrestling with a decision. Then he said firmly, Lord Hokage, I actually have a way to prevent my clansmen from starting a coup. The third Hokage's face twitched slightly. What method? Taking a deep breath, Shisui explained, Lord Hokage, my Mangekyo Sharingan possesses a technique called Kodo Ematsukami. It allows me to subtly and irresistibly alter someone's will without their knowledge. If clan leader Fugaku refuses to see reason, I can use this ability during a clan meeting to stop the coup. Though Shisui's voice was soft, it was like thunder in the third Hokage's ears. Shisui possessed Kodo Ematsukami, an ability that could rewrite a ninja's will without a trace. This was terrifying. Loosening the fist he had unconsciously clenched under his sleeve, the third Hokage looked at Shisui with newfound caution. If Shisui could control others so effortlessly, he could also control him. The sheer implications of such power were chilling. After a tense pause, the third Hokage walked up to Shisui, placed a hand on his shoulder, before saying, I appreciate your honesty about Kodo Ematsukami, but no matter what, clan leader Fugaku is still one of our own. Your Mangekyo Sharingan should never be used on a comrade. I hope you'll only use Kodo Ematsukami as a last resort. Shisui nodded respectfully. I will heed your wisdom, Lord Hokage. Unless it's absolutely necessary, I won't use this ability. However, I truly wish to prevent a conflict between my clan and the village. It's enough that you care so much. The third Hokage smiled faintly and removed his hand from Shisui's shoulder. I understand the situation now. You can return and wait for good news. Shisui bowed slightly, then exited the Hokage's office. The moment Shisui's chakra signature faded, the third Hokage wiped the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief, his face pale. Kodo Ematsukami, a genjutsu capable of altering someone's will undetected. Such a technique was far too dangerous. Even if he trusted Shisui not to act against him, trust and capability were two different matters. The fact that Shisui could control him was terrifying in itself. Fortunately, Shisui had been raised under the will of fire, unwavering in his loyalty to the Hokage. But if Shisui had chosen to side with the radicals, a Uchiha-led coup would have plunged the village into chaos, on par with the disaster of the Nine-Tails attack. With that in mind, the third Hokage quietly made up his mind. he would never meet Shisui alone again. If Shisui turned on him, he would have no chance to resist. Reorganizing his thoughts, the Hokage began to deliberate the next step. Should he preemptively expose the Uchiha's coup plans and send a force to wipe them out? Or should he compromise, offering the Uchiha a position on the Council of Elders? If he annihilated the Uchiha, could the village afford the losses? Would other clans grow fearful and distance themselves from the Hokage? But if he gave the Uchiha a seat on the council, would other clans demand similar concessions? And who could guarantee the Uchiha wouldn't press for even greater power, like the Hokage seat? After much deliberation, the third Hokage still couldn't decide. With a weary sigh, he snapped his fingers, summoning an Umbu ninja. Notify Danzo and the other advisors. I need to meet with them immediately. Chapter 275, Danzo's Invitation. Half an hour later, Root Leader Danzo and the two elder advisors arrived at the Hokage building. Once seated, Danzo noticed that the third Hokage's expression seemed off. Frowning, he asked, Sarutobi, what urgent matter prompted you to call us here? The third Hokage nodded and got straight to the point. Shisui just came to see me and reported something very important. It concerns the Uchiha. Some members within the Uchiha clan are planning a coup d'état, a full-scale armed rebellion to seize power and install themselves as Hokage. Hearing this explosive news, Koharu Udatane and Hamura Mitokado's expressions turned grim. Koharu asked sharply, is this intelligence reliable? Have the Uchiha truly come to this point? Danzo scoffed coldly, then said, Tobirama-sensei always warned us, the Uchiha are an inherently cursed and dangerous clan. Even after gaining control of the Konoha police force, they remain unsatisfied and now aim for a coup. Sarutobi, we can't delay any longer. It's time to strike the Uchiha with decisive force. Hearing Danzo's harsh proposal, Koharu and Hamura hesitated. They had considered a forceful approach to deal with the Uchiha before, but the question remained, did they truly have the strength to handle the Konoha police force? If it involved the entire Konoha military, eliminating the Uchiha would be feasible. However, the Uchiha were not an external enemy like the other ninja villages. They were a clan within Konoha, and relying solely on their loyalists, Anbu, Root, and the Konoha Defense Forces, might not be enough. On top of that, disagreements would arise about which forces to deploy. Who would suffer the casualties? If their trusted subordinates bore too many losses, they would risk becoming reliant on other clans in the future. Breaking the tense silence, the third Hokage dropped another bombshell. Aside from the coup, Shisui also revealed a secret about his Mangekyo Sharingan. His Mangekyo possesses a Jinjutsu called Kodo Ematsukumi, which can manipulate a person's will without their knowledge. He plans to use it on Fugaku to stop the coup. The revelation of Kodo Ematsukumi shocked Koharu and Hamura, who gasped audibly. A jutsu that could rewrite someone's will without leaving a trace? Such a terrifying ability, of all people, it belonged to an Uchiha. If Shisui decided to target the leadership, his power could rival that of Madara Uchiha in his prime. Danzo's face darkened as he processed this information. After a brief pause, he suggested coldly, we must act against Shisui. His existence poses a greater danger than any other Uchiha. I even suspect that he was behind the Nine-Tails attack years ago. With Kodo Ematsukumi, he could have controlled the Nine-Tails or even another ninja to orchestrate that chaos. Danzo's words stunned Koharu and Hamura, who turned their gaze toward Hiruzen. Although Danzo's claim seemed like an attempt to pin the blame on Shisui, there was a twisted logic to it. After all, no one had ever identified the masked man who attacked the village. Shisui possessed the Mangekyo Sharingan and the ability to manipulate others. In theory, he was capable of orchestrating such an incident. Under the intense scrutiny of the others, the third Hokage finally spoke. The Nine-Tails attack couldn't have been Shisui. Don't forget, he's Kagami Uchiha's grandson, someone raised by those who share the will of fire. He risked suspicion and danger to report the Uchiha's coup and even disclose Kodo Ematsukumi to us. If we doubt him, we doubt the will of fire itself. At the mention of the will of fire, Koharu and Hamura backed down immediately. To them, the Uchiha rebellion wasn't particularly concerning. Even if the Uchiha seized power, they would primarily target Danzo and Hiruzen. The advisors' own positions as council elders would likely remain untouched. Their only concern was whether the chaos could escalate, inviting interference from other villages. Danzo clenched his fists, suppressing his frustration. Glaring at Hiruzen, he muttered, "Your leniency will only embolden the Uchiha further, Sarutobi. Mark my words, you will regret your decision." With that, Danzo stormed out of the meeting room without looking back. Hiruzen watched Danzo's retreating figure, a smirk of disdain crossing his face. "The Uchiha want power, but don't you also crave the Hokage's seat, Danzo? The only reason you're not a threat anymore is because you've been steeped in the shadows for too long." Once Danzo left, Hiruzen turned to Koharu and Hamura. "Koharu, Hamura, let's continue discussing the Uchiha. If we offer the Uchiha a position on the council, do you think that will satisfy them?" Leaving the Hokage building, Danzo walked alone through the shadows. Although the meeting had ended poorly, he had gleaned crucial information about Shisui. First, Shisui genuinely wished to ease tensions between the Uchiha and the village, to the extent of revealing the secret of Koto Amatsukami. Second, this dangerous ability had to be dealt with. Danzo's expression darkened as his mind raced. A genjutsu capable of altering a person's will. Shisui Uchiha, you're far too dangerous to be left alive. At that moment, Danzo made his decision. Shisui had to be brought under his control, one way or another. Second, Shisui's Mangekyo Sharingan houses a technique called Koto Amatsukami, capable of silently controlling a ninja. This was precisely the power Danzo needed for his own future ambitions. Such a dangerous jutsu simply could not be allowed to remain in the possession of an Uchiha. Danzo also didn't believe the inherently cursed Uchiha could ever coexist peacefully with the village. The clan would never be satisfied with their current position and would inevitably attempt a coup to seize control. With these thoughts in mind, Danzo looked toward the Uchiha district and fell into contemplation. He already had a plan forming in his mind about how to obtain the Mangekyo Sharingan. Inside the Forest of Death, Shisui stared anxiously at Byakuya, who was calmly fishing ahead. Frustration filled Shisui's voice as he asked, "Byakuya-sama, why did you have me reveal the secret of Koto Amatsukami to the third Hokage? Exposing such a jutsu will only make him wary of me." Byakuya reeled in a large fish and glanced at Shisui, who was finally showing signs of strategic thinking. After abandoning that foolish will of fire, it seems Shisui's intelligence has improved. He's even aware that revealing Koto Amatsukami would cause suspicion and fear. That's progress, Byakuya mused to himself. Shisui is slowly evolving into a normal, rational person. After placing the fish into a basket, Byakuya turned to Shisui and said, "The heavens don't reveal their secrets. Give it 2 minutes, and you'll understand why." With that cryptic remark, Byakuya vanished into thin air with his catch, leaving Shisui alone. Still puzzled, Shisui froze for a moment before his enhanced senses picked up movement in the distance. A moment later, a figure wearing an animal mask emerged from the shadows, one of Danzo's root operatives. The root ninja stared coldly at Shisui and delivered his message. "This is a summons from Danzo-sama. He requests your presence at the root headquarters to discuss the future of the Uchiha." That's the end of this tale for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in part 11. Peace.